this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, get hell," before driving off. And so I just said it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory, 3 minutes past 6. I came in this morning and it seemed like quite a nice day, but somehow it's managed to cloud over and there's rain falling, which I can say is only a harbinger of things to come, because Rachel Reeves today is going to be unveiling her new budget. You know, you might call it a spending review, you might call it some kind of uptick, you might call it some kind of, correction. It's a budget, OK? Let's not make any mistake about it. And she's going to be handing out loads of money to people that she doesn't have, including something like £39 billion to build some new houses. I'm not sure where these new houses are going to be built, but what it does tell me is that Angela Rayner is the big winner out of this whole spending review, because she's managed to get more money, I think, for her department than almost anybody else in every other department. And alongside Angela Rayner's kind of view that we want to build more houses, she's apparently going to decriminalise people rough sleeping. Not quite sure why. Meanwhile, she says she's going to crack down on people begging on the streets. I don't know how that's going to work. Lots of other things going on. The Times has got a story saying the NHS won't hit any of its targets, despite the fact that there's 30 billion coming their way. Well, what is the point? If they can't hit the targets, maybe it's time to actually fix what's going on. Britain is in crisis, according to Harry Cole. He's written a piece in The Sun today. Well, after England lost last night to Senegal in the football, they've got a new manager. He's only played, I think, 4 games. The first time ever that Britain, an English football team, has lost to an African football team. I think that pretty much tells you how bad things have got. The red arrows are on the front page of The Sun as well. Apparently they're running out of planes. I kid you not, they cannot actually have enough planes to make Diamond 9. You know that thing, that the shape that they do? Because they've only got 6 planes. So, I mean, it's another tragedy, really. It's another absolutely ridiculous thing. Front page of the Daily Mail, Rachel Reeves rocked by job slump. This is a story we did yesterday. 109,000 fewer jobs in May than there were in April, which means that basically companies are finding it harder and harder to keep people working because it's just simply too expensive. Absolutely ridiculous. Also, there is some good news out there. Taxes are going down. If you are somebody who is in receipt of working payments, you will find that you'll be paying less tax. The trouble is, it's not going down in Britain, it's going down in Mauritius. because of the Chagos Islands deal. We've given them so much money that the government in Mauritius has said to people, you don't have to pay so much tax. Don't worry at all. It's not a problem. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk about robot doctors. We've got an amazing guest coming up later on, a former commander of the SAS. We believe it's the first time a former commander of the SAS is talking on a broadcast, radio and television ever. I don't think it's ever happened. So we'll be asking him about the terrible prosecution of SAS veterans. We'll be talking to him as well about the ready for war, the war readiness that we're supposed to have. Theo Usherwood is here as well. Good morning, Theo.
Very good morning.
Good to see you. We've got lots to do. It's 6:05. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 6 minutes past 6. The day is upon us. It is, of course, Wednesday, the 11th of June. We're nearly halfway through the month already. I don't know what's going on. Theo, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's all about Rachel Reeves, I guess, today, isn't it? Because she's going to get up later on in Parliament and deliver her budget. Effectively, I mean that's what she's doing, isn't she?
Yeah.
And whatever you might want to call it, that's precisely what it is. But it's a sort of spending review where she's going to unveil loads and loads of plans to spend loads and loads of money.
Yes. Yes, she's going to announce that at about 12:30 in the House of Commons.
Yeah.
Basically, where the government's going to spend money for the next 3 years up until the next election. £39 billion extra for social housing alone. The NHS gets an extra £30 billion pounds, but front page of the Times, looking at their own internal models, they're not going to hit the targets to cut.
So effectively, they're basically saying 30 billion is not going to make any difference whatsoever to what we're doing.
No, and it's not going to. It's just not going to touch the sides in terms of actually getting people through the door so they can get their operations that they need.
And so, you know, despite what they say on social media that waiting lists are coming down, we know they're not, because every time we say that, we get people on messaging us saying, actually, I've just had my operation cancelled again for the third time, and we don't know when they're actually going to see me, or I've been waiting 6 months and I'm still waiting, or, you know, I can't even get in to see my doctor in the next 4 weeks unless it's some kind of emergency. You know, the NHS is still absolutely failing everybody.
Yes, it's those ghost appointments where, in order to hit the targets, and I've been in when many of your listeners have been in touch, Mark, where they basically, the NHS goes, look, here's an appointment within 18 weeks, so there you go, we've hit the target, and then suddenly they get to the morning or the day before the appointments and suddenly it disappears. And
I know people who are currently letting me know that they've got appointments in July which are currently being cancelled.
Yes.
So they're cancelling them now, knowing that they won't be able to do them in July, which seems bizarre, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But to your point, I think it's down to the fact that if the initial appointment is provided, then it's a way of saying, well, we've met the target effectively.
Yeah, right.
And that. But you know, even when you look at this, the front page of the Times, NHS won't hit targets even with the extra £30 billion.
Right.
And this is important because in today's spending review, it is in essence Reeves and Starmer's plans to try and get the country back on its feet in time for the next election. If this doesn't work, then we know there's a hard rain coming from Nigel Farage and Reform. I watched a large part of that interview with Simon Case, former Cabinet Secretary Harry Cole. Really interesting stuff about basically...
Yes, we must play a couple of clips from that. I haven't seen that yet.
2 years to fix, otherwise there's a hard rain.
Right.
There's a hard rain.
Well, people are getting more and more fed up. I mean, the front page of the Daily Mail today, Reeves rocked by job slump, because, of course, this is a story we had yesterday. It was broken. In fact, I think I saw it was Julian Jessup who put it out, that 109,000 jobs have gone from the workplace just in May alone. 109,000 people are now no longer working when they were working in April, and it's all down to the rise of employing people, the rising cost of employing people, the national insurance increase, the minimum wage increase. People who are running businesses are telling me all the time they have to cut back. They can't afford to employ people.
It's the cost with that decision. That was there were many disaster decisions catastrophic decisions for the economy going to April, and then of course the financial statement from last summer as soon as Labour came into office. But that decision to put up national insurance contributions, it had the effect, of course, of we saw because the markets didn't like it, the cost of government borrowing, government debt going up. So in fact, 1 in every 4 of those pounds just went on debt interest alone over the course of...
because it's huge now, isn't it, the debt interest?
Huge, it went up by 10
close to unmanageable now, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just this, they're just on this sort of continual doom loop, and this is Simon Case's point, where they're just pushing up taxes. The way to get economic growth is not for the government just to splurge more taxpayers' money. It's to cut taxes, so that rather than businesses sitting there going, I can't afford to take on another 5 members of staff or 10 members of staff, or just an extra man or woman if they're a small business, to actually say, well, hang on a moment, my taxes have gone down, therefore I'm going to expand my business.
I can expand. I can do a little piece of. I can do a sum on the back of a fag packet and say, actually, if I get 2 more people in, I can get twice as much productivity out of them, and maybe I can make some more money.
Yeah, but
that's not happening.
There's no experience when it comes to business.
No.
In the top of government, there's no.
But it's a shocking situation, though, isn't it? Surely they should have people. I mean, they've got Timson, the guy who runs, the very successful company that rehires prisoners and people like that. I mean, why is he not telling them how to run a business?
Well, you would have thought, wouldn't you? But he's in the Ministry of Justice, and they could do well not just to listen to his advice.
Well, he needs to pop into Downing Street once in a while and go, oi, this is not going to work for business.
Yeah, and but also there's a situation now where they've closed the doors. They're not listening to businesses. They're not consulting with chief executives. They're not consulting with the people who are making these decisions, because if they were, they wouldn't have made the decision in the first place. And so we're just spending more money, and it's all going to have to come. They're saying, the economy's better. It's all going to be great. Actually, the real pain is going to come in the autumn when they have to pay for it all.
Well, they have to pay for it all, And I mean, page 2 of the Daily Mail, amazingly, there are 12% of voters who think Rachel Reeves is actually doing a good job. I mean, I don't know where they found these people. This is a YouGov survey on the eve of the spending review today, showed widespread disillusionment with her performance since taking office last year. And I always use Dan Hodges as an example here. Dan Hodges, for about the last 7 or 8 days, has been saying that Rachel Reeves has got the skids under her. She has completely lost all credibility. Her financial knowledge and nous has been exposed as being completely and utterly inadequate. She simply doesn't know how to do the job. A separate poll by the think tank More in Common found that confidence in Labour's ability to deliver on its promises has collapsed since the election. The survey revealed the public has become tired of Labour blaming the country's current problems on the previous government. And similarly, the country is very tired, and we got a lot of this yesterday, very tired of listening to government ministers, spokespeople talking about things that they've achieved when they clearly haven't achieved them.
We had it with the winter fuel allowance. Keir Starmer went out yesterday and was, he turned around and he said, well, the reason we can reverse the decision on the winter fuel allowance is because the economy is so much better.
Absolute
People
rubbish.
don't feel it.
Absolute rubbish.
And you look at the numbers when it comes to...
complete cobblers.
Absolute
rubbish.
But he would be far better, and he's not going to do it, and they're not going to, the Chancellor isn't going to do it. It'd be far better just to say we made a terrible mistake, we didn't know what we were doing, and we're very sorry, or you don't even have to say that bit, but we're very sorry. And
I'd love to hear Keir Starmer coming out and going, we didn't know what we were doing. That would be box office, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would, but he's
never going to do it.
He's not going to do it, but he needs, they'd be far better just to make an admission that they screwed up.
They made a complete Horlicks of it, because they have. There is nothing that they've done right. You've watched many governments coming in. You've seen, honeymoon periods. I mean, people were even willing to give them a honeymoon period. I remember when they came in July, there was a sort of collective sigh of relief, I think, that the Tories were finally gone. People were fed up with them. There's no point in pretending otherwise. Rishi Sunak was not a very good Prime Minister. But, my God, I mean, these people have literally just torn the arse out of it. They're completely useless. I'm sorry to say that word this early in the morning. I apologise. 14 minutes past 6.
We'll get away
sue
with
me, report me to Ofcom. I don't know. But that's what they're doing. They've literally done that.
Yeah, they had their first go in July, and of course they gave the rail drivers and public sector workers £10 billion.
They gave £22 billion to the NHS, all of which was swallowed up by the junior doctors, right?
Everything. And they're saying they want to go and strike again.
Yeah.
And we're going to go do that
down that road again.
And then, of course, they increased. They scrapped the winter fuel allowance, and they went into the autumn budget.
Now they're giving it back.
Now they're giving it back. They've made.
It's hopeless.
But they would be. They would do. It would do better just to say we made a mistake.
Yeah.
And they won't do it. And I think what frustrates voters, what frustrates many of your listeners and beyond, Mike, is that people look at it and they can see they've made the mistake. And you don't need to listen to your show.
No. You just need to walk down the street.
Walk down the street, and consumer confidence has gone. People aren't being, businesses has not got that, confidence to hire more people and to expand. It is not a good situation.
Yeah.
And trying to pretend that we live in la la land, and that it is all good and everything is rosy. And
Right.
sort of, it doesn't wash with...
No.
It doesn't wash.
It really doesn't. People's rents are going up. People know that the financial kind of outlook is very, very shaky, completely nasty, particularly if you run a business. Even if you've got a job, you're probably wondering whether you're going to still have the job this time next year or whether you're going to be laid off over the summer. I hear from lots of people who do shift work that their shifts are sort of drying up because people say we're not sacking people, but we're giving them less kind of shifts if they're working in hospitality, that kind of thing. I know from my son who works in a hospitality business up in Manchester that they're giving out fewer shifts for the guys that work behind the bars in this particular venue. You know, it's affecting everybody. There's nobody sitting there going, do you know what? I'm having the greatest year of my life. I'm having a fantastic time. Business is absolutely booming and we're doing great stuff. The only people who are really pleased with Keir Starmer live in Mauritius. Because according to the Telegraph, so Keir Starmer's deal to sell basically the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, which apparently has cost us more money than it's cost them, means that basically ministers in Mauritius are abolishing income tax for 81% of people in work in Mauritius. So 81% of people in Mauritius don't any longer pay income tax, thanks to Keir Starmer. Well done, Keir.
And on another day, this would be the splash story, the lead story. But of course, we've got lots on the.
What a joke!
It is, and it's. I think what's important about this story is that it speaks to the fact that actually he doesn't have the priorities of the British people at heart. And they went ahead and they signed this deal. And there's a danger when you have stories like this. People think, it's in Mauritius, it's in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and it doesn't really apply to them, it doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter, because actually 30 billion pounds over 99 years is a lot of money. It's going to the Mauritian government because we're effectively leasing the Chagos Islands back, and it didn't need to happen.
No.
Diego Garcia, which is of course the crucial island because it's the hop-off point for military operations in the Middle East, that is it is a base for the Americans. I'd love to see the Chagos Islands, one of those islands, suddenly become an eavesdropping centre.
No.
For China.
Well,
it's not going
to be that surprising if that's exactly what happens to it. We're going to take a little break. We've got some good clips to play you as well. 17 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham. Theo Ashwood is here. We'll get to the heart of some of the big stories coming up next.
I actually think the burqa should be banned. I think it is reprehensible in this country. I think anything that actually blocks communication is a barrier to communication and integration. I know this only too well, but living in East London as well, which is we've got silos of people who don't integrate. That is not how you build a great country. Now, that goes further. Nigel talked about this, about facial coverings, about crash helmets, for example, in public places. This is about law and order and safety. And also, it's about having shared British values. And we need to make sure we do have that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 19 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 for a glorious hours, of course, of what is going on. The NHS Trust I work for have just launched a consultation to lose 120 jobs, says Jill. This will be across the whole NHS, we are told. I presume that's part of the, the realigning of the NHS. Mike, in your many years of journalism, have you ever reported on a government as useless as this current one, says Roger? No, is the straight answer to that. They really are. I mean, I could ask you the same question. Certainly not as unpopular as this government, because they really are. You don't even. I mean, it's sort of visceral, isn't it? The hatred for this government that people have.
Right, people are really angry at the moment. They're feeling the pain, and there was an expectation that actually, and you sort of alluded to this a few moments ago, Mike, that actually, when they were elected in July, yes, we'd had 14 years of Conservative government, and it hadn't gone, especially towards the end, it hadn't gone particularly well. And actually that Labour would come in and put things right. And they actually promised to put things right. And they haven't put things right. And it's just huge frustration that at every turn they've made, the decisions they've made have actually set us back.
Yes.
And, of course, we have to wait another 4 years till the general election. But it's very difficult to see within everything that's contained within the spending review today how actually more pain isn't on the way. It's going to get tougher for people. It's going to get harder because, of course, this money that's been announced when it comes to the £39 billion for social housing, more money for the NHS.
They're just making the money now, aren't they? They're making it right now. It's almost like quantitative easing time.
Yeah, they're going to, and the problem they've got, the real concern is that actually, it's not necessarily the opposition from the Conservatives. It's not even opposition. I think the opposition from Reform is important, but I don't think it's a real concern here. The real worry, I think, is going to be what do those men and women in the square mile and across the financial markets think of this budget. And if they have a collective freak out, if they look at UK PLC and they think this is not being properly run, is not being properly managed, then we're going to see that with the cost of they're going to put up the cost on bond yields. That's going to go up, and that's going to mean that more money is having to be spent servicing the debt that the government has. The government's.
Well, I think, is it not something like £1 in every £12 is now being spent on repaying the government's debt?
That's money that just doesn't go.
That's a big chunk.
So when the government turns around and says, well, it wants to recruit more teachers, it can't recruit more teachers because it's paying the money on
let's get to that in a minute. Let me ask you, because I'm going to ask you about the housing situation in a minute. But let's have a look at Robert Jenrick. He was out and about making another one of his videos. He's now becoming sort of the video jockey of the Tory party. He's asking the public what they think of Rachel Reeves.
What do you think about Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor?
I think she's a pain in the ass. She has no life experience, no business experience.
Not keen on her anyway, are we?
No. Borderline incompetent.
Out of depth, I think.
She hasn't got much idea what she's doing.
She lied on her CV, said she was an economist. Turns out she was working in the complaints department at Halifax.
If they found out I'd lied on my CV, I'd lose my job instantly.
They're lying all the way along, aren't they?
Taxes just going up and up and up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, when is it going to stop?
If she's going about lying about that, what else could she be lying about to us? She lied about winter fuel payments.
Very disappointed. When you've paid all those taxes, why did you take it off the pensioners?
She lied about the farm tax.
My ambition always, my son was keen on farming. The idea was, yes, I'd like to hand the farm over to him. We're almost certainly going to have to sell.
We're now spending £1 billion a month on benefits to migrants. How does that make you feel?
Politely not happy. That was the first thing they did, pay the train drivers.
£15.3 billion on migrants coming to the country. That's all those hotels.
And that's the thing, everybody has something bad to say about Rachel Reeves. Nobody has anything good to say. I mean, I'm sure Robert Jenrick, edited that in the way that he wanted to edit it. But nevertheless, you would be very hard-pressed to find anyone that thinks Keir Starmer and this Labour government's doing a good job. There's a piece of the Telegraph this morning on page 2 saying foreign-born heads of households in London cost Britain about £3.6 billion a year in discounted rent. Talking about building houses, right? And nearly half of all social housing in the capital, 48%, is occupied by foreign-born heads of household, which is data from the 2021 census. So you can imagine, since 2021, 4 years ago, London has become even more foreign, as far as I can say, and as far as I can see just from walking around. So I imagine that actually 48% has probably now become 55%.
Yeah, these households benefit from, the Telegraph's reporting, benefit from cheap rents, which, when compared to the cost of private housing in London, means a discount.
Because it's social housing.
Yeah,
and this is what the big row is with Angela Rayner. She's pledging to have more social housing built, but people are getting sick to the back teeth of going, well, that's fine, you're building social housing, but who's getting it?
Yes.
Because I'll tell you who's getting it. Are people coming into this country from elsewhere.
Yeah, and this is a point that Robert Jenrick actually, obviously played that video, and he's been very successful with these, videos on X, on social media, and actually.
Millions of people watching them.
Millions of people are watching them, and there's no brand recognition for the leader, Kemi Badenoch.
Right.
I'm sure there's no brand recognition for Samel Stride, the shadow chancellor, and he's straying onto his brief there with this video, because he's talking about the shadow. He's talking about the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, but he makes the point that the research costs, shows the huge cost of mass, low-skilled migration, often hidden from the public. When you actually lift up the bonnet, he says it's clear that levels and composition of immigration has been hugely economically harmful for decades, and it's a massive problem. It's a massive problem, and he's starting. What I think is interesting is actually, rather than just relying on his position as the Shadow Chancellor and sitting behind the dispatch box and asking questions to Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, he's actually getting out there and meeting people, and he's showing himself to be by far and away the most effective leader of the Shadow Cabinet. Now, of course,
a politician with a common touch. There's not many of them.
No, and I think part of the problem there is a problem in all of this, though, is that he obviously wants to be the leader of the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
But those who would support Robert Jenrick, who like Robert Jenrick, have already left.
Yeah.
They've gone to Reform.
Yeah.
They've gone to Nigel Farage's party. And actually, what you may well end up with is that if there's a leadership contest, unless they decide just to recognise the effort that Robert Jenrick has put in opposition and go, look, Robert Jenrick, here, have the job, then actually there'll be a contest. And because all of the people who within the Conservative Party who would support Robert Jenrick have left to go to Reform, you could end up with somebody like James Cleverly or Tom Tugendhat leading the party, because they have the majority of
which
the
will get them absolutely nowhere, I'm afraid. And a lot more people actually are saying to Robert Jenrick, why don't you take the sort of the red pill, if you like, and go and join Reform, because actually that's where you belong.
Yeah,
because he's got far more in common. And in fact, even bizarrely, yesterday, David Bull got himself into a bit of trouble. David Bull of this parish, of course, the breakfast show host at the weekends. He was appointed chairman of Reform. One of the first things he said was, immigration is the great strength of this country, or something like that. And even Robert Jenrick had a go at it and said, that's not right. So Robert Jenrick is now to the right of the chairman of Reform. Who knew that was going to happen?
It was a point that was raised yesterday. Is that actually in the press conference with Nigel Farage, and I was there. Is actually now the Conservative Party is actually on the right of Reform, as Reform tries to tack back because it wants that chunk of Labour voters who, of course, left the party for Boris Johnson's Conservatives in 2019, and then went from there back to Labour, but now actually increasingly are looking for Reform, and there is a danger.
But Reform is positioning itself quite interestingly, I think. I mean, yesterday Nigel Farage came out and said that he wasn't going to be pro the death penalty either, which is also, generally speaking, quite a right-wing position. We've got a little clip actually of Nigel from yesterday talking about the return of Azia Yusuf.
We've been running this party over the course of the last 11 months with a very, very minimal number of staff. The one that has perhaps borne the greatest burden is Zia, who was doing pretty much everything behind the scenes and sometimes in front as well. All of which explains his bid for freedom last week. He crawled out under the wire and was running away in the woods as fast as he possibly could, leaving a trail of not so brilliant tweets behind. But after 48 hours we got him, and he's back inside, and he will be taking over a job that will still consume him for a good 12 hours a day, maybe not the 18 hours a day he's been doing for me over the course of the last 11 months. I'm a good, kind boss, he'll tell you. I thanked him once over the course of the last year.
He's getting quite good at this, Nigel Farage.
Yeah,
I mean, he was
he is.
always pretty good at it, but he's actually kind of refining it all now, isn't he?
And taking...
Also, by the way, just in case anyone was in any doubt, Nigel Farage is running Reform.
Yes.
The chairman does not run the Reform Party. He hires him, he fires him, he brings him back from the woods, you know, brings him back into the fold, as it were.
But there is two points. Firstly, you know, Zia Youssef has been shunted aside, and they brought in David Bull because he's popular on Talk, and he's a popular figure amongst Reform members. And I think there's a feeling in the party that Zia Youssef was too abrasive, and that he didn't connect with Reform's core vote.
Right.
And it's all very... We saw... You remember when Rupert Lowe left the party and the backlash that came about after he left.
And the people who like Rupert Lowe have still got that backlash, and they keep... You know, I think it's to a large extent a sort of Twitter phenomenon, because the reason I say that is it doesn't play out when there's an election, you know, because it all happened before the local elections, and they still swept the board. You know, and the same in Scotland, where they came, you know, a very close third to Labour, sorry, to the SNP up in Scotland.
But those people who supported Rupert Lowe or who had sympathies towards Rupert Lowe are crucial. Nigel Farage didn't obviously name Mr. Lowe in his press conference yesterday, but they're crucial to doing the hard grind of being a party activist. So he needs that base.
Yeah, but I think he's lost some of them, though. Because there's a body of people now who don't think that Reform is going to be a success, and I think they're wrong about that, by the way. But the reason they think that is because they think that Nigel Farage is too, you know, autocratic. He holds it all too close to his chest. The fact that he let go of Ben Habib, the fact that he let go of Rupert Lowe, the fact that other people at grassroots level were kind of shunted out by Zia Youssef. There is an issue there, but I just don't think it's a big enough issue to prevent Reform from having massive success.
I think they're still going to go and have massive success.
I think so.
But also think about the policy, say, on lifting the two-child benefit cap. So that was seen as being too centrist. It was going too far into Labour.
Right.
And so what he's done by putting Zia Youssef to one side is actually bringing in David Bull and giving as it was put to me, giving those members in the party something to cheer about, so that they still feel connected to the party. I take your point. I think many of them were so disillusioned when Rupert Lowe left.
And some of them aren't going to come back. But a lot of that has also to do with some of the other policies that they didn't think Nigel Farage was following. But I mean, let's be fair to David Bull as well, because what he said about immigration was not just, you know, immigration has been great for the country. He also said what we don't want are people coming into this country who are not assimilating with British culture. You know, which is entirely in line with Reform's view of the world, which is exactly what he should say.
Yes, and the reason that immigration has become such an issue, and we're talking about it day in, day out, and it is of such concern for your listeners, is because even if, you know, by the Defence Secretary's admission, John Healey's admission, they've lost control. When you are spending upwards of £1 billion a month on benefits or on housing and it's £4 million a day, isn't it, for housing migrants in hotels?
It's 4.7 billion a year, basically, just on the hotels alone.
And when you're spending that amount of money, no government can claim to have control over the issue. No. And it is a problem. And
interestingly enough, when you look into the Sun's pages today, on pages I think it's 8 and 9, they've got just 680 million going to protect the borders. So they're spending 39 billion on housing, they're putting 30 billion into the NHS, they're not even putting 1 billion towards protecting our borders. Now you might say that's because they're already spending billions and billions of pounds already on housing these people, but there's no sign really of any clue about Labour being able to fix what is the problem.
No, and then they're not. You know, the French should just demand more and more money, and they're not going to provide more and more money. They've got rid of the deterrent scheme that was the Rwanda scheme. They've got no, and it's not going to be the subject of today, but it is a significant problem.
It is a massive problem,
and they're not showing.
And here is a significant representation of what people think. And this is Carol, Shoreham by Sea, a loyal listener to this show, has been for a long time. Morning, Mike and Theo. I have never despised the government before because I've never experienced such an incompetent, deceitful, spiteful group of people in my lifetime who are not only ruining our country but destroying our worldwide reputation. Please continue to keep us sane. Well, I mean, we'll get on to it, I'm sure, later, but even Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State in the United States of America, is having a go at Starmer's government last night because of our attitude towards Israel.
That was a very powerful statement.
That's a very powerful statement, which we'll come to. But let's not forget, it is the budget review, it is the financial review by Rachel Reeves today. I mean, who could forget that, you know, amongst many of her other talents, she's a woman.
When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will notice.
They will look up and they will notice. You see that smile on his face? He doesn't do that much anymore. I bet he's wishing he appointed a bloke now, because she has made a complete and utter disaster of the economy. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, I'm afraid. It's 6:34. I'm Mike Graham. Theo Rushford is here. This is Morning Glory. We'll be back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham at 6:36. Has anybody mentioned that unemployment is going up and predicted to go quite a bit higher, above 5%, yet we're opening doors to Europe again, as well as India? Please make this make sense, says Papa. Yeah, well, it doesn't make sense, does it? The point is that, you know, we are still very much importing workers from all sorts of different parts of the world, and that's only going to increase. You know, we've got more and more people out of work here because more and more employers can't afford to employ them, and yet we're going to then undercut those people with presumably cheaper labour coming in from parts abroad. You know, a European lot of people are going to come in as per the freedom of movement deal for the youth up to the age of 35, I think it is. And then Indians are coming in as per the deal, the trade deal that we did with India. I mean, it's absolute madness. They don't seem to know what the hell they're doing. And just to illustrate what the hell they're not doing on international fronts, let's have a look at David Lammy on Israeli sanctions this morning.
These two individuals, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, have been inciting violence against Palestinian people for months and months and months. They have been encouraging egregious abuses of human rights.
You can't quite say Palestinian, which is not great if you're the Foreign Secretary of this country. Front page of The Guardian today. The UK has joined Australia, Canada, New Zealand and Norway placing sanctions on two Israeli government ministers, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, largely for inciting violence against Palestinians. I don't understand why our government's getting involved in it. Marco Rubio, as you say, made a very powerful statement about it, saying, you know, let's not forget who the enemy is here. The enemy is Hamas, it's not Israel.
Yes, and they're posturing. You know, the government's posturing. There's a problem with its own backbenchers, and they're trying to posture to show that they're taking a stand against Israel by sanctioning these two individuals. But you know, these are sanctions that are reserved for, you know, those close to Vladimir Putin. I mean, this is not, you know, Israel is a key strategic ally of the United Kingdom.
In all sorts of ways.
In all sorts of ways that many people just don't appreciate. For instance, when it comes to intelligence sharing, when it comes to military operations, when it comes to supporting work, you know, that we do in the Middle East to stop terrorism in this country. Israel is an absolutely crucial ally, and it suffered on October the 7th the most horrendous 2023, the most horrendous terrorist attack on its, you know, since going back to, you know, since the Holocaust in terms of loss of life. And Hamas continue to hold hostages And yes, everybody can see that the situation, and when I speak to people in Israel, nobody is under any illusions about the dire state of the situation, particularly in Gaza.
Yeah.
But right now, we should be completely supportive of what Israel is trying to do. And the quickest way to bring about a peace, a long-lasting peace, is for Hamas to give the hostages back.
Of course it is. Absolutely right. And, you know, it may well be that you don't agree with some of the opinions that come out of cabinet ministers in the Israeli government, but as somebody said last night on the show that I was watching, you know, who is it, what is it that we have the right to do to investigate other governments and to, you know, criticise ministers in other governments because you don't like what they're saying? You know, to put sanctions on these guys is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, Hamish Faulkner, the Middle East minister, he says, and I'm quoting here,
he's about 10.5.
We must hold them to account and protect the viability of the two-state solution. I mean, who does he think he is?
Nobody wants a two-state solution, right? Yeah. The guy's a complete moron. The only reason he's got the job is because of his dad, right? Yeah. He's literally, as I say, just out short trousers. And the guy has not got a clue about international détente, if you ask me.
Yeah, you raised the point about the two-state solution. How? I don't understand.
Nobody wants one.
If you're
the Palestinians don't want one. The Israelis really don't want one either.
No, if you're in Israel's shoes and you want to give statehood to a country that was going to effectively be run by Hamas, you're going to give it an army,
right?
You're going to give it
so they can keep attacking you.
So, and this is and it would be one thing, right, if the Hamas had said after October 7th, look, here are the hostages, terrible mistake, really, really sorry, and it won't happen again. But every day since October the 7th, they've vowed to continue.
They want to do it again.
They'll do it again.
They want to do it again.
And for us to turn around, the British government to suddenly turn around and say, well, you know, you need to come up with this solution, this two-state solution, that's just going to make their job easier.
They might as well give the job to Dawn French, sitting in the cabinet there, you know. Yeah. Let's get a voice note from Tim on Labour. How bad are they?
Mike, this Labour government is going the same way as every other Labour government in history before. Boom and bust, boom and bust. They haven't got the money. They're digging a biggest hole that we won't get out of. You can't keep borrowing money and putting up taxes on businesses and personal sort of wages. We can't keep paying for this. This is ridiculous. They haven't got the money. Where's this 39 billion coming from? There's never any answers to the questions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tim. There is never any answers to the questions, and if they do ever dodge the question well enough to try and give you some kind of answer, the answer is inevitably a complete and utter lie. Ellie in Staffordshire says, morning, Mike and Theo. What country in their right bleeding minds gives money to a country to reduce their taxpayer bills and national debt to increase our own? Starmer must be gone. It's ridiculous. I'm at my bleeding wit's end. I think now is the time to look at the front page of The Sun. If you thought that was bad, right? How about the red arrows running out of planes? This is an exclusive by Jerome Starkey, their defence correspondent. Top brass are told the display fleet will soon be down to 6 planes, which is a bit of a problem, given that one of the things they're famous for is the Diamond 9, when they have 9 planes in a diamond formation. Amazing to see, great to look at. It's on the front page here. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. The sort of point at the end is the 5th plane, 4 on either side, coming down in a sort of V shape and a diamond shape. I mean, incredible. If you've never seen the Red Arrows, you have to see them. They are the most remarkable machines and most remarkable pilots you've ever seen. But even the Red Arrows, you know, the great signature of the Royal Air Force, the great signature of Britain, the fly past that we have whenever there's a royal event, you know, we see them flying up the river here, going over Buckingham Palace, the red, white and blue smoke coming out. Amazing. But they haven't got enough planes.
No, and what message does it send if the RAF can't field 9 aircraft? That's an RAF source speaking to Jerome Starkey. And of course, these shows are much loved, and I think they say a huge amount about Britain. They say a huge amount about our role in the world, that we can that we have the Red Arrows, and we have a strong, it comes from the fact that we have a strong military, or we like to think we've got a strong military.
Yeah.
I think it's very much up for debate, and it has been for many years.
Well, we like to think we're war ready, according to Keir Starmer. Of course, we're not, are we?
No. And I think that's the point that's been made by those those top brass within the RAF, that if we can't even put on an aerobatics display, then how can we show any sort of military strength towards the likes of Vladimir Putin or anybody else who wants to do this country harm? What I thought was just an interesting fact, and I say this as a bit of a nerd, but apparently it's because of the massive G-forces that these aircraft do, rather than, as it's put, sedate fly past.
Right.
And that's what rapidly reduces the jet's lifespan. So when you see them do all the tricks, obviously that has a huge pressure on the parts. And apparently 13 of these Hawk T1s.
Because they're quite old as well, aren't
they? Yeah, they're in deep maintenance.
Right.
Which means they're not likely to be fixed anytime soon, and we could be down to just 6 of these aircraft, which, as you say, makes a mockery of any idea that
maybe let's just rename it the Red Arrow. Just have one plane that just flies around and does some really cool stuff, you know. But it's really unfortunate. And this comes again. I'm sorry to do this to everybody and bring football into it, but back page of the Sun, Forest chumps because they were playing at the Nottingham Forest ground last night, the City ground. They lost 3-1 to Senegal. Thomas Tuchel, the new England manager, who's obviously from Germany, first loss for him after his 4th game, I think. It's the first time ever that the 3 Lions have lost to an African nation. Pretty much sums up where we are in the world, doesn't it?
Yeah. And
Senegal 3, England 1.
Yeah, and this guy, oh dear, oh dear, is the headline on the inside. This man was brought in. He's been paid millions. He was then working from home, I think, in Germany.
Yeah.
And the idea that the whole purpose of bringing him in was that he was going to win us the World Cup, and that just looks to be for the birds. So
well, of course. These are the same people that thought Gareth Southgate did a great job and actually knighted him for coming second.
Yeah, well,
there's no point coming second in football or in any sport. Coming second means you didn't win.
We just want football to come home, don't we? But
we just like England to have a team that can actually win something. That would be nice, wouldn't it? It's not asking too much, is it?
It's not going to happen, Mike. I'm not a big England fan.
No, I'm not really either. I don't. It's not something I live or die by. But it just would be nice, would it not, to have a country to live in, which you could be proud of, which had a government that you could actually, look up to and go, they're doing some great things. As it was when I was a much younger man in the 80s, when you could see that there was something going on. I mean, I said this about Dubai. When I was there the other week, you could feel that there was a sort of growth. There was a hunger. There's a sort of there's business going on. There's people making money. People are having a good time. People are living well because they are ambitious. This country seems to have lost its ambition. The government doesn't have any. Their ambition is to spend more of our money. That's their ambition. But to what end? They want to welcome more foreigners into the country. They want to give them, preference. They want to put them at the front of every queue in the NHS. They want to punish the working people of this country that they keep referring to, and tax them more and more and more, and they crush their ambition. I mean, it's ridiculous.
But what happens when you put up taxes to the extent that they've done on businesses is that you make places like Dubai just that much more attractive.
Yeah.
So it's inevitable that you end up with that feel-good factor in a country like Dubai, where people want to go and start up businesses and expand and
because
and
you're encouraged to do it.
Because they have a low tax system that enables people to go and do it and make money and be a success.
Yeah.
And that's
let's
who we're up against.
Let's have a look at what Keir Starmer had to say yesterday. This was about the expansion of the nuclear program, the Sizewell video that he's about to launch Sizewell C, which is already partly underway anyway, thanks to the Tories. Have a look at this.
When he came into our class, he acknowledged everyone, he shook our hands, he seemed really nice.
Today is a really important day because we made a huge decision about the future of nuclear in our country. Huge investment of money, £14 billion, 10,000 jobs. Not just an important decision for the future, it's a change of mindset. No more dithering, no more delay, no more being unclear about what we're going to do. A real statement of intent as we go forwards. What I take away from this and meeting you is what it means for you. 11 to 16-year-olds already going on site on a regular basis and thinking about the jobs that it might mean for them. Good, well-paid, secure jobs, skilled jobs across a range of topics as we go down this road in relation to Sizewell.
What on earth is that music? So they've moved on from the soft porn music from the 70s. They've now got some kind of weird sort of, I don't know what that is. Is that kind of soft rock or something that they've dug out of the archive? Why can't they make a decent video? Why do they put music on it? What's wrong with them? Seriously, I mean, it's awful.
I'm at a slight loss for words, Mike.
Don't worry, because I've never lost for words. And Miliband did one as well yesterday. Let's have a look at this.
Golden ages, we've all had them. Nuclear power had its golden age in Britain in the 1960s, back when we used to build things as a country. This government says It's time to start investing and building again and end the years of decline. That's why we're announcing the biggest investment in nuclear in over half a century. Sizewell C, SMRs, nuclear fusion, it's all part of giving us energy security as a country, tackling the climate crisis with clean energy and creating good jobs the length and breadth of Britain.
Yeah, I'll tell you what the C stands for. You know, that man just gets more ridiculous by the day, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's working. You know, it's the working people. It's
working people.
But it's you know, if you speak to the trade unions, they're furious about it because they're just losing. They're losing out. You know, they work on, or they're seeing their jobs on rigs and on offshore oil and gas just dwindle, just go down because of course this government said that
because they've made an absolutely positive decision. They say to ruin a business, a completely viable business, by the way.
And now we're going to get wind farms where the turbines are made in China and then imported into this country. We're not going to get
made by slaves. Yeah, marvellous. Isn't it great? Let's get a voice note from Liam.
Good morning, Mike. Liam in Folkestone. Yeah, you mentioned the Mauritian government is rubbing their hands with glee with Starmer's administration, but you forget another category of people. All of those unscrupulous landlords up and down the country who are letting their houses out for a pretty penny to Serco to house all of these illegal migrants are raking it in. Not to mention all of those hotel chains that are also cashing in on this migrant crisis. Anyway, if you don't laugh, you'd cry. Keep up the great work, Mike. Cheers, mate.
Liam, you're absolutely right. Thank you very much for that. Morning, Mike and Theo. Says Barry in North Yorkshire. I'm 66 years old. I've lived through previous Labour governments. However, I can honestly say that I've never in my life seen such an incompetent shower as this current lot. To make matters worse, they expect us to believe their lies. I'm glad I'm at my time of life and would not want to be a youngster starting out. I fear for the future. A sad indictment, I know, but that's how I feel. And I mean, I think a lot of people would share that, Barry, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think a lot of people...
People are really a pretty low ebb. I mean, I talk to people all the time who are just like, for God's sake, how much worse is it going to get?
And people want success. People want this country to be a success, and they don't see that leadership from the top.
No. And Starmer, again, in that clip, talking about, you know, creating opportunities for people to get to work, and 11 to 16-year-olds are going to have great jobs. Well, they're 11. You know, people who need jobs now are in their 20s, you know. Forget about the 11-year-olds for the moment and start actually giving jobs and creating jobs for people who actually need them now.
It's a million young people not in work, educational training.
Yeah.
So that's huge. A huge amount.
Yeah, get them out to work, do something, give incentives to people to employ them, give tax breaks to people to get work. You know, do something. But they don't. It's 6:51. Lots more coming up, including a look ahead to Prime Minister's questions, which, of course, is coming up a little bit later on today. Back after this.
They lie and they lie and they lie. This is unprecedented, the amount of lying this government's doing.
Yes, though you could, in fairness, Kev, you could argue that the Conservative government set a bit of a precedent for the whole thing, you know, with Boris and so on. But yes, you're right. I mean, certainly on domestic issues, Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have been pretty disgraceful. And Reeves particularly, there hasn't been you will never get a word of contrition out of that awful woman. She will never say, yes, my first budget wrecked what was becoming a promising economy. And that's the truth.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:54. This from David, who says, in South Oxfordshire, after increasing my water bill by 43%, Thames Water has sent me an email telling me to get my leaky loo and taps fixed to save them water. The sheer cheek of it. There's a strong hint water shortages are coming. Fixing their leaks first would save far more. Well, it would, wouldn't it? You would think that that might be what they might think to do. Ben has got something to say on Starmer's Sizewell video.
Good morning, Mike. It's Ben from Wigan. In relation to that video that you just showed with Starmer talking about Sizewell C, I mean, nothing about the Starmer robot is original at all, using no more diver, no more delay. That is an attack line that Boris Johnson used to use against him. He can't even come up with his own lines and slogans. I've never met or seen, not that I've met, I don't want to meet her, but I've never seen a Prime Minister that just makes me so angry every time he talks. Oh, my God.
It is unbelievable how much he just annoys people. I mean, that's part of the problem with Starmer. He doesn't seem to realise how annoying he is. He doesn't seem to realise how to do it any other way. But let's just move off politics for a minute, because a couple of things that we need to talk about as well, although this is being driven by the Transport Secretary, if you'll pardon the expression. Yeah. Driverless taxis will hit the UK roads from next year, according to Heidi Alexander. Fast-tracking pilots of driverless taxi and bus-like services are going to be moved up to spring 2026. I'm not keen on this, right? No. And call me sort of antediluvian, call me an old dinosaur. I don't want to get in a car that doesn't have a driver. I'm sorry.
It's not going to work.
I just don't want to get in a car that doesn't have a driver.
No.
I like driving myself, right? The only other circumstance under which I'll get in a car is if I'm sitting in the back and I'm coming to work and somebody's driving me in. I will not get in a car with nobody driving it.
You could see this system. It's not going to work because, of course, the way the cars will be set up is that they'll be very scared of litigation of it going wrong and somebody being in an accident and suing, whether it's Uber, isn't it? Yeah. Or any of these ride-hailing apps for if they're in an accident, they have an injury. So what they're going to do is they're going to make these cars, and they're just going to be really cautious. Yeah. You know, and I know, if you want to get out of a junction in London, especially in central London, or when it's a school run or whenever it's really busy, you just have to be that little bit pushy to nose out and get going. Otherwise, you're not going to go anywhere. Right. I can see a grid. I can see these cars. I mean, I'm not a fan. I wouldn't particularly like to get in one of these driverless cars. You could see it working in an American city which runs on a grid. And
Except, they've had terrible problems. I was talking to my son in Los Angeles about this, and apparently they had terrible problems because things happened in these cars that they didn't see coming. For example, people were doing drugs in them, people were filming porn films in them, because you can, the human being is quite a sort of inventive character, So all these things were starting to happen in these cars, and they went, crikey, we never thought of that. And so now they've had to sort of revamp the rules and make sure that people are getting picked up, have become members. So this sort of idyllic idea that the kind of, the internet futurists said, where you just literally hail one and you just get in it, that doesn't work anymore. So you have to be a member of some club, you have to sign up to something, you have to have your credit card that you can be charged for. And as we've seen in the riots in LA, people set fire to them because there's nobody in them. There's nobody actually able to drive them out of danger.
I just can't see it catching on. I can't.
I don't like the look of it at all. No. Meanwhile, to make matters even worse, on page 9 of the Daily Mail, more than 500,000 NHS operations a year will be automated by 2035, meaning you won't actually be seen by a doctor, you'll be seen by a robot.
Yes.
I'm sorry, another one that I'm going, no, I don't think so. They can't actually
open heart surgery with a robot,
No, they can't even run, a mailing list at the NHS. They can't work out how to get you to an appointment. They're going to tell me that they can now run a robot that will be able to see you. I don't think so.
Could you imagine getting a robot to you just go into the quick operation and the robot does it rather than a human?
No, not if it's run by the NHS, because they can't run anything. If it was being run by some...
So if you had like a Bupa healthcare plan or something, you went in, you might give it a go? Or no?
I don't think so. I still think I'd rather speak to the guy that's doing it. I'd rather see him afterwards, if he hasn't killed me. I don't really think I want to have a robot scenario. I just don't trust it. And finally, just before we go, because we're literally out of time, desert storm, or desert storm, it says in the Mail, in the Sun, Ryan Savey story. How House of Lords canteen has been given a roasting for serving a rainbow-coloured Pride crumble dessert, followed by something called rainbow couscous, which is also on the menu in the River restaurant. Why do they bother?
So,
What's the matter with them?
Well, apparently they've been told by the Conservative peer Baroness Nicholson that they can't have pride flags, and so that the reason that this is their sort of clapback.
This is their rebellion. I mean, rebellions in the House of Lords used to be a little bit more right-wing, it seems to me, but there we are.
So they've now come up with a pride crumble dessert. I have to say, it looks absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I don't want to eat something that looks like a rainbow. Thanks very much indeed. Anyway, we've got to run. Theo Oshwood, thank you very much indeed. I'm Mike Graham, back after the news.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. If you're just joining us, you've missed one hell of a good first hour. We've been running through a whole bunch of stories, including on the front page of The Sun this morning, the Red Arrows are running out of planes. I mean, one of the great headlines. I mean, it just says it all, really. There are some headlines that get written in newspapers. You don't even need to know the rest of the story. We'll give you the fill-in of all the facts, of course. But basically, they're running out of planes to the point where they're now down to just 6. Which means they can't do the Diamond 9, which, of course, as you might expect from the title, involves using 9 planes to make a diamond shape that they fly through the air with. Absolutely extraordinary. If that doesn't tell you what the decline of Britain is right now under Keir Starmer and his crappy Labour government, I don't know what does. Added to that, of course, England lost last night to Senegal 3-1. The first time ever that a team from these islands has lost to an African nation, England anyway. 3-1 to Senegal on home soil. Absolutely and utterly hopeless for Thomas Tuchel, the new manager, who's only been in the game four games in. He's already losing it. Daily Mail front page, Reeves rocks by job slump. This was a story we told you about yesterday. Rachel Reeves has been hit by a job slump as she prepares to take a gamble on the nation's finances with a giant spending spree, which she's going to announce today in her spending spending review, £30 billion for the NHS, which apparently isn't going to make any difference whatsoever to the running of the NHS. That's according to a story in the Times. It says that even the NHS's own modelling is predicting that the £30 billion is just going to disappear into a giant black hole, because unfortunately the NHS is so badly run, is so far in trouble and is so badly in debt that none of this money will make any difference at all. The Department of Health shows the NHS is on course to hit only about 80% of its targets by the end of this Parliament. Officials suggest the figures can only approach 92% by using implausible and overly optimistic assumptions. Well, that's a pretty good description of this government, isn't it? Meanwhile, of course, we've got Angela Rayner, £39 billion coming her way to build some new houses. But exactly where are they going to be built, and exactly who's going to be living in them? And where's the money going? We'll be asking that question to Sunil Sharma, coming up, political commentator, host of the Rational Voices with Sunil, right after this. Also, for some bizarre reason, Angela Rayner wants to be in the business of decriminalising homelessness. So she's going to come out and say, basically, that if you are sleeping rough on the streets of this country, you will not be in any way, shape or form arrested. You will, in fact, be encouraged to do so because you won't suffer any consequences whatsoever. So that's going to be great, isn't it? So we're going to literally be stepping over people in the street as they more and more can't afford to live in the cities of this country. In the meantime, she says that she's going to not decriminalise, she's going to prosecute more beggars and people who are trying to get cash off you on a regular basis on the street. Well, that's not going to go down too well, is it? 0344 499 1000. Also, the big story we're talking about this morning, London pays £3.6 billion to house non-Britons in discounted homes all over London. Marvellous, isn't it? This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Welcome to the Morning Glory show. This is, of course, the home of common sense. It's the one place where you get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Margaret in Yorkshire says, Mike, I wonder how many people dread the thought of Mr Starmer coming to their place of work and having to stand there while he rambles on. Yeah, especially those people who have to stand behind them. Mark in Selby says, Mike, these driverless cabs will be an unmitigated disaster after the first cyclist is hit on London's crowded streets. Just who is going to be liable for that? Well, that's a very good point. And one here from Ginny, who says, morning, Mike. I was made redundant in January thanks to Rachel Thieves. They remind me of the Smash Mash robots from the 80s. They're as robotic and metal. Never have we had such an awful government. Robots are taking over. Cue smash laughter. And then we smash them all to bits. Yeah, that's what it's like. That's exactly what it's like. Let's talk to Sunil Sharma, political commentator, host of the Rational Voices with Sunil podcast. Sunil, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So we've got the big day today. We've got Rachel Reeves handing out money to all sorts of people. I've got one question for you, and I bet you can't answer this because I haven't met anybody yet that can. £39 billion they say they're going to spend on housing, right? Which is going to be more than likely social housing for people who can't afford to pay sort of, you know, top dollar for commercial property. But who's actually going to get £39 billion of our money? That's what I want to know. And my suspicion is it's going to go to commercial building companies.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I don't know where they're making these figures up. I don't know where they're going to get the money from. And I think it just sums up how poor our cabinet really is. You look at the expertise in some countries, like what's going on in America, whether you like Trump or not. You look at the profile of his cabinet, his administration, and you look at the experience that they have when it comes to business, when it comes to their previous background and their previous careers, and you look at the cabinet that we have here in the UK, this has to be one of the least experienced, one of the weakest cabinets that we've ever seen in history. You wouldn't trust them to do anything. So the fact that they're now plucking these numbers out, it's really hard to take anything that they say remotely serious, because I don't think there's any trust from anyone in this country in terms of when it comes to them and they talk about the budget, when they talk about investments. I think there's a real lack of trust in this cabinet.
No, there's a total lack of trust. I mean, we've been getting message after message this morning from people saying they've never been more angry, they've never hated a government more. I mean, in my experience of doing this job for a very long time, seeing dozens of governments practically, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen the people of this country so wound up and so absolutely filled with hatred for the individuals in the government and just for everything that they're doing. They're doing an absolutely dreadful job of everything. There is nothing good about what they're doing.
I mean, they're driving people out of this country. They're driving the people who should be here. They're driving them out of the country. They're driving businesses out of the country. They're creating an environment where if you want to be remotely successful, that they have no interest in keeping you here. I think this government has to be, when it comes to experience, when it comes to knowledge, the worst that Britain has seen. And it's really, really depressing to know that this is the profile of people leading our country. God knows what people think internationally. Well, we know what they think internationally.
Well, we do know. I mean, Marco Rubio has already criticised the government overnight because of David Lammy's ridiculous sanction on 2 Israeli ministers in a foreign government for which we have no responsibility and we have no real reason to criticise. You know, what's it got to do with David Lammy or the Foreign Office or this government in this country, what Israel's ministers have to say about life?
I mean, his focus and this cabinet's focus should be in terms of driving the UK economy forward. How can we collaborate better with countries abroad in terms of getting smaller businesses, expanding them into more foreign territories, in terms of getting foreign companies investing into the UK as well? We should be looking at growth strategies. Instead, Lammy's getting involved in issues that he probably has no idea what he's talking about. And I think that sums it up, that you've got a group of people who are more interested in virtue signalling for a small population of people in the UK than actually thinking about the best interests of the vast majority of this country, because they don't actually have any principles. They don't have actually strong ideas. So what they will do instead is look to do any sort of virtual signaling, propaganda that gives them that little moment of what they think is something that's useful. But the vast majority of people are not interested. They want to know how their economy is going to get better. They want to know how their lives are going to get better even. And I don't think anyone believes for a second that this government's going to help them do that.
Yeah, exactly. That is the problem. And one of the things that's really driving people mad this morning is a story in the Telegraph. Other papers have got it as well. That tax cuts are actually helping people in not this country, Mauritius. You know, because of course Keir Starmer, having given away the Chagos Islands, which he somehow managed to negotiate into a massive loss to us of about £30 billion, they've done so well in Mauritius because of this deal that they've actually got rid of income tax for 81% of employed people in Mauritius.
I mean, it's an amazing deal for Mauritius. You know, they were able to help get rid of some of their national debt. But it sums up how weak and poor our negotiations are in this country. You look at, again, America are probably the closest example that we can compare to. You look at the way that they are prepared to negotiate as a country, whether it's Trump, whether it's other people in the cabinet. They are some of the toughest negotiators because they've worked in business, because they've run different companies. So they understand the power and the value of negotiations. Our current cabinet has no idea what it's doing when it comes to negotiations. So people will rightly take advantage of us. And I think for us as a country, it's really depressing that, you know, a country like Mauritius is able to take advantage of the UK. And I think it sums up how inept our current Prime Minister is and their government is. The fact that Mauritius have been able to do this, the fact that Mauritius are benefiting from a deal that the UK largely brokered, and then looking at the fact that that has actually had such an adverse impact on the UK, it's really, really, it's crazy stuff. It's hard to understand that we have a cabinet that's working for us, because I don't know how else to say that they just do not seem to be serving the interests of the British people. More so, they seem to be on a mission to hurt British people, which I think is just absolutely crazy.
It really is. And I mean, as I say, with every step that Starmer takes, it seems to get worse and worse and worse. Have a look at this. This is Sizewell C yesterday, the announcement being made by Keir Starmer. Absolutely ridiculous.
When he came into our class, he acknowledged everyone, he shook our hands, he seemed really nice.
Today is a really important day because we made a huge decision about the future of nuclear in our country. Huge investment of money, £14 billion, 10,000 jobs. Not just an important decision for the future, it's a change of mindset. No more dithering, no more delay, no more being unclear about what we're going to do. A real statement of intent as we go forwards. What I take away from this and meeting you is what it means for you. 11 to 16-year-olds already going on site on a regular basis and thinking about the jobs that it might mean for them. Good, well-paid, secure jobs, skilled jobs across a range of topics as we go down this road in relation to Sizewell.
I mean, I'm not sure about you, Sunil, but where are these 10,000 jobs coming from that Keir Starmer's threatening to create? Because I'm told that Sizewell C is already a project underway, which was started under the Tory government. So where are these 10,000 jobs actually going to come from? And if they're not people that are skilled enough to do them in Suffolk, are people going to be expected to move there?
Crazy. I think he's, again, just plucking numbers out of the thin air. I think he's not actually sat there and thought about a growth plan for this country. I don't think anyone in that cabinet has sat there and thought about how do we actually grow the British economy? What does the future of Britain look like? Where is our areas of growth coming from? I think he's plucked numbers out of thin air. He's seen something the previous government did and thought it's an opportunity for him to latch on, take some credit for. But I think that the harsh reality is I don't think anyone in the UK really truly believes that this government is going to create jobs for Britain. I don't think it's going to improve the value of jobs in Britain. If anything, they'll continue to take jobs away. They'll continue to hurt businesses. They'll continue to hurt small businesses, large businesses who employ thousands of people. It really is a sad time for Britain. And with everything that's going on, I unfortunately can't see when things are going to get better under this government. I really just don't believe the current profile of people in the cabinet that we're actually going to see much change in the United Kingdom. They need a complete overall in terms of who is in that cabinet. The calibre of people has to improve if we're actually going to see any improvements in Britain.
Yeah, but I think, unfortunately, as far as Labour is concerned, they don't really have anybody decent to bring in, you know, because if you look around, there literally isn't anyone that's not in the cabinet that you would put in it from the Labour government, as far as I can see anyway. And the other problem, of course, is the blob. You know, Harry Cole, the Sun's political editor, has done a great interview with Simon Case, the former sort of head of the civil service, right? And it's on Never Mind the Ballots. You can get it on the Sun's YouTube channel. You can also get it on Talk's YouTube channel as well. Have a look at this.
Did you say this when you're on the inside?
I'm not going to go into what I said on the inside, but I'll tell you what I think. And you can draw your own conclusions. You can't have elections where no matter who you vote for, you just keep getting the same answer.
Yes.
So you have to change this question. We have to put... we love to kind of rib and tear strips off our politicians. Actually, I think we go too far on that. These are people who put themselves forward to try and make this country a better place, and they deserve our support for doing it. And what we should be trying to do is make sure that whatever platform they stand on, whoever you vote for, if they come into power, they've got the space to do it. And a lot of that, for me, is about stripping back the powers that have been handed to all sorts of... not all of them are quangos, but all sorts of interest groups, and bring these back into
what we might call
control.
The blob. Do you recognise that?
I used to be in charge of a big bit of the blob. And as you probably know, I hate that phrase because I think it's unbelievably dehumanising.
Yes.
But I do understand
where it's coming from.
That there is this kind of faceless, to many people and many politicians, faceless sort of set of organisations that seems to be holding power no matter what you want to do.
And that, of course, is a massive problem for every government. You know, I think the Tories found it. You know, Dominic Cummings came in with Boris Johnson in 2019 and they tried to sort of dismantle the blob. But somehow we've ended up with more civil servants now working for the government than ever before. It's the highest number of all time.
I mean, this is a massive, massive issue. And I think what's interesting is I think we would need a Trump-style person to come in and basically remove a lot of these positions. I think the other thing is the calibre of politicians come through is not good enough. You know, if we did take away the civil servants, if we did take away their powers, we take away the quangos, you know, do we really truly believe Sir Keir Starmer has the answers with his own ideas? I don't think for Sir Keir Starmer the blob is the issue. I don't think he can function without them. So I think for somebody like him, they're actually really important. But I think for if you want actual pioneers, if you want actual leaders, if you want people to come in to actually, you know, really change our economy, be forward-thinking, look at what's happening across the world, look to really improve our service-based economy, look to improve people who, you know, there's no future for young people if they don't go to university. If you want to really improve those stuff, then we're going to need to remove the blob. We need to get the power back to the elected officials and people with strong beliefs and ideas. Unfortunately, right now, I don't see too many people like that in this country. And I think as long as until we do see people like that, I think the blob will continue to win.
Yeah, I think that is a massive problem. Good to talk to you, Sunil. Thanks very much indeed. Sunil Sharma, the political commentator and host of the Rational Voices with Sunil. One of the things that's been going on, of course, the last few days has been the rioting happening in Los Angeles, California. There's been some massive rows going on between the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, or Newscum, as he's called by Donald Trump, and Donald Trump, of course, who says, you know, this guy doesn't have the wherewithal to deal with these riots. It's become, as ever, one of those very, very sort of divisive stories. But let's have a look at what Trump had to say on the ICE protests. He was speaking in Fort Bragg last night.
The agitators are throwing firebombs, Molotov cocktails, lighting vehicles ablaze. You saw all the cars that were burning, mobbing police officers and ICE officers who are the toughest people you'll ever meet, and they love our country, and they're getting really they want to stomp on them, but they're too tough. They don't allow it. And attempting to infiltrate and occupy federal buildings wearing armor and face shields. The best money can buy, somebody's financing it. We're going to find out through Pam Bondi and Department of Justice who it is. They're already on it. Who's financing all this equipment? Very professional. Under the Trump administration, this anarchy will not stand. We will not allow federal agents to be attacked, and we will not allow an American city to be invaded and conquered by a foreign enemy, and that's what they are. A lot of those people were let in here by the Biden administration. They just poured right in. They came from prisons, they came from jails from all over the world. They came from mental institutions. They were the leaders of gangs. They were drug lords allowed to come into our country. Their countries threw them out. Their countries would bus them or drive them right to our border and say, go in there, you ever come back, we're going to kill you. And we got them, and we're getting them out of here.
I mean, the situation just goes from bad to worse. There's going to curfew, apparently, as we speak, going on over in California, parts of it in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles and south central LA. Very much no-go areas, so we'll bring you more on that as we get it. Let's get a voice note from Ken.
Morning, Mike. It's Ken here, Dorset. I'm actually still working, even though I'm past retirement age, and 20% of every penny I earn goes in tax. So I'm about to pack up and off to Mauritius. Thanks, Keir. See you later. Great show, Mike.
Yeah, thanks to Keir Starmer. If you live in Mauritius, 81% of the working people there, working people of Mauritius, don't have to pay any income tax. Brilliant. Kazam! You know, Keir Starmer's finally done something right. Unfortunately, he's done it for some people from another country. He hasn't done it for the people of his own country. I mean, pretty soon it'll be the other way around here. You'll be paying 81% tax. Absolutely ridiculous. The other big story today that we're doing, which is not particularly political, although it is being backed by Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, is the imposition of driverless cars. Do you really want driverless cars around the city streets that you live in, around the towns that you live in, even in the countryside? According to Sarah, near Plymouth, she says, we are all in a driverless car. It's called the UK with a Labour government. Very good. Lewis says this: why can't people see that driverless cars, taxis and AI result in two things, less jobs and more profits? Then our government will sit there and say, oh, but the economy's good. Oh, really? Apparently there's another AI summit today, by the way. I saw this on the BBC as I was coming into work this morning. I have no idea why we're having another AI summit. I thought we had one the other day. I thought Keir Starmer was talking at the AI summit where he was going on about how brilliant AI is going to be for everybody, for working people. In what way will driverless taxis be putting money back into the pockets of ordinary working people, says Steve. Love the show. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't understand it. I don't want to see driverless cars. I don't think they're a good idea. I don't trust the people who are running those companies. There's a picture from the weekend at Chequers where Keir Starmer was chatting to some bloke who was about 6 inches taller than him, who runs a company that produces driverless cars. I just don't think they're ready for prime time. I just don't think they're trustworthy, to be honest. And you might think that I'm some kind of, you know, as I say, you know, dinosaur-like weirdo who can't understand technology. It's not that at all. I just don't like the idea of somebody driving a car who's not there. I just can't get my head around it. Maybe you can tell me how it works. 7:23.
So on the one hand, we keep hiking up energy prices with this religion of net zero, this lunatic end of times religion, which says that unless we cut carbon by a certain amount in 10 years, we're all going to fry in an apocalypse. Completely untrue. So they've devoted themselves to this cult, which has the effect of raising those prices. And then they have to bring in this allowance to help older people pay for the basics of life. Yeah. And then they take that allowance away. I mean, as you said earlier on, this is down to the Tories as well as Labour, but we are ruled by dumb people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. It is the home of common sense right here, and we hear an awful lot of it from you. So don't forget to get in touch. You can call us on 0344 499 1000. You can text us at 87222. You can send us a message as well on X or Twitter, whichever you prefer, at talkTV. We know we want to hear from you because you bring us the common sense that we crave. Margaret in Birmingham says, Starmer, on his video, Dithering and Delay, how about stop destroying this country? Stop these videos. Get your brain into gear, you plonker. Rodney. One from Stuart. Right, regarding the million young people out of work, nobody wants to employ them because Starmer increased the minimum wage to the adult rate. So given the choice, the adult with experience will be employed. And Sean in Gloucester says, Starmernomics at its finest. Morning, Mike. 100,000 jobs lost in the oil and gas industry, but don't worry, we might get 10,000 jobs in the green sector. What a moron. Absolutely right. Well, nothing's going right in this country right now. And, of course, right now is the time where we're going to discuss something else which is actually not going right at all, and it is Britain's broken borders. And time to speak to Stephen Wolfe, Director at the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Stephen, very good morning to you.
Very good morning, Mike.
I mean, two big stories this morning for me. The spiralling cost of housing foreign-born tenants, which is on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The Sun has also got a spread saying that, inside Rachel Reeves' £113 billion splurge, only about 680 million is going to be spent to protect our borders. Surely that's the biggest thing that she should be spending money on, isn't it?
It should be. But look, we're looking in the United States. You've just covered a story about the riots that are occurring in Los Angeles, and all that is happening because Donald Trump has succeeded in closing the borders down between Mexico. It's gone from producing 300,000 a month crossing on that border, and he's put a lot of money into it. And as a result, there's no border crisis. And now he's able to concentrate on the next thing, which is getting rid of illegal people from their country. And they're not, the left don't like it, the Democrats don't like it. And here we have the equivalent of a Democrat in Rachel Reeves, watching the fact that we've had 162,000 people cross our borders since the year 2018, and she's pitiful in the sums of money. If you want to stop it, learn to what Donald Trump is doing, and if not, just carry on doing what you're doing, and we'll still get thousands more.
Right, because in America, I don't hear anybody complaining about the amount of money that Trump is spending to get rid of these people, because they're clearly undesirable, they're clearly criminal, many of them, and they simply shouldn't be in America. They came illegally, and they should be deported straight away out of the place. I mean, we saw Greta Thunberg getting deported from Israel yesterday. You know, she was there a matter of hours. It was delicious to watch her being put on a plane and having to have a massive carbon footprint in economy as she was flown out. But, I mean, that's how you do it, isn't it? You don't wait for sort of 7 months or 8 months or 10 months or 10 years to get people out of the country when they've come here illegally. You just get them out straight away.
Well, that's what most people expect. If you're illegal, you go away. But we do seem to have a government. Let's be fair, Mike, on this. I'm not simply just blaming the Labour government here. The Conservative government were exactly the same.
They were.
You seem to enjoy the idea of criminality. Seem to think that crime pays and everything about it is okay, because we're going to allow people smugglers, who we now know have made over £1 billion since 2018 on their illegal profits, but we won't stop the borders. And we're going to allow people who are criminals to get out of prison early if they get a sentence at all. So rather than dealing with what most people want, the ordinary common man says, if we got a criminal, deal with them. And if they're a criminal across the borders and coming in illegally, deport them. This government and the one before just have no clue, don't want to do it. And the question we always have to ask them is, fundamentally, why will you not deal with criminals properly?
Yeah, exactly right. Because you know as well as I do, Stephen, and so do most of the people listening to this show, they understand that when Angela Rayner says, for example, I'm going to spend £39 billion on some new social housing projects for this country, one, the money is going to go to a load of commercial companies who should be building the houses anyway without any subsidy from the government. But two, who's going to get those houses, right? We see a story in the Telegraph today where nearly half of all social housing in London, 48%, and this is a figure, by the way, from 2021, so it's probably on the low side, it's probably now above 50%, is occupied by foreign-born heads of household, which means that not only are we not deporting people who come to this country, whether legally or illegally, but we're actually giving them housing.
Yeah, absolutely, and I find that particularly disgusting. I'm one of those lucky people from the 80s who had to wait 5 or 6 years at the age of, when I was 5 or 6 myself, actually, didn't get our first council home until we were 11, when my mum, who was a single parent mother with 2 children, had to wait years to get it. Now, I'm lucky. I went on, I won the scholarships, became a lawyer, got out. But there are still 250,000 people born in this country, living in similar circumstances to I did, in bedsits, who don't have the access to social housing. And it's wrong, absolutely wrong, that we give houses to people who are foreign-born citizens, particularly if they've come over it and got it because of indefinite leave to remain, and then because they're come across as an illegal migrant, and then able to claim their families to come across as well. There is a priority. The priority in housing, and particularly social housing, should be people born in this country. And when you talk about those numbers, Mike, that you're right, 48% in all those years ago. But I've read research recently that puts areas, some parts of Ealing, 75% of social housing is down to people who are not born in this country. And that is wrong. It's against the principles of British fairness, equality, and looking after the poor who are born in this country, which is what social housing was about.
And there's nothing wrong with saying it either. You know, there are still those people in this country who are kind of, you know, shy away from it, who think it might be a bit racist, who think it might be a bit sort of, you know, discriminatory against people from other countries. Well, yeah, I think we should be discriminating against people from other countries, because people in this country deserve to be at the top of the list, and they're not. Unfortunately, the people who are from this country have to take a sort of a seat and wait for their turn behind lots of people who shouldn't be here.
And that's right. And I think whenever somebody turns around and now says it's all about race, colour or religion, that's absolute nonsense, because there's enough people born in this country now who are like myself, either mixed race. There's someone who's black, Muslim, Asian, whatever the colour that they are, because of the way that our nation has been, and they're born here. And many of them, like myself, are very fundamentally supporting of our nation, our flag, our institutions, our culture and our history. And they deserve that right to be able to have a home here before somebody else. Now, we've never had a principle in this country, sadly, that really fundamentally said British-born should get the priority in housing, and the Race Relations Act in 1969 removed any particular opportunity for that to occur. But all right and principled people, in my view, should accept the principle that those born in this country should have the primary right. If they're poor and unable to be able to look after themselves, they should come before those people who have come from a different country. And I don't think it's wrong to say that.
No, of course it's not wrong to say that. And we should continue to say it, and we should continue to press for it to be changed, because you know very well, Stephen, as well as I do, that, as I say, Angela Rayner's housing plan is going to give priority to people who they will call vulnerable because they've come from another place.
Well, that's right. The principles of the rules of the Housing Act and various other pieces of legislation change the way that the benefit system works to those of people they regard in need. And of course, if you come from abroad, you're on a boat, and you arrive here without your mum, your dad, your family, and then you claim for them to come in, which is able to do so now under our discretionary claims for asylum, and you bring over a family of 6 or 7 from Afghanistan or Iran or Iraq or Somalia, you've now got a family in need. And you will go ahead of a man who's been divorced from his family in his mid-40s or 50s, who might have to look after his children, but he will no longer be regarded at need. He'll be at the bottom of the ladder compared to someone who's come over, despite the fact he may well have paid taxes all his life. And therefore, that is why there is an anger in this country about how we distribute the limited amount of social housing that we have.
Well, at least there's one piece of good news this morning, Stephen, and that is that, you know, Keir Starmer has managed to reduce the income tax bill for some people. Unfortunately, those people all live in Mauritius because apparently, thanks to the Chagos Islands deal, Mauritians are now told that 81% of them will never have to pay income tax because they've made such a lot of money out of the deal that they got from this country. It's hard to believe, isn't it? You couldn't make this stuff up.
Oh, I just get so... You try not to be angry, don't you?
You do.
You try to level yourself and just go, hey, I know there's madness out there in the world, but when you're seeing Mauritians now not paying tax, when you see a government trying to fund the Ukraine to 100 billion, or try and spend more money on weapons, or not stop the borders, and then you increase wages to people like the train drivers to 75,000, which is in the top 6 or 7% income earners of this country. And ordinary citizens are being left behind and ignored or having to pay more. You just think there's a sense of madness out there. And why are these individuals in charge who lack common sense and the ability to understand looking after your own is far more important than looking after the big international corporations and those of your mates who are international lawyers?
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable. Stephen, we'll try and stay calm. It's not easy, but we'll try and do it. Stephen Wolfe there, Director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. A couple of messages that have come in on this front. Warwick from Devon says, Mike, great start to your show. Well, are we looking forward to Prime Minister's no answers to questions time today? What a complete non-event it has turned out to be. And one from Darryl, who says, morning, Mike, it's going to be a nice hot day today. Don't worry. I've been waiting patiently for Morning Glory to start. I can't deal with this world, and it's people like you that help me through the day. Have a good day. Well, you know, I thought it was going to be a nice hot day today, but then suddenly this sort of mist descended upon the capital city of London, and here at the tower, looking out from the 17th floor, it looks a bit grim. You might be able to help me out with that. It might be better where you are. Good morning, Mike, says Mark in West Sussex. Labour are decriminalising street begging to make it easier for everyone. When these morons are finished, we'll all be reduced to begging to survive. Well, they're decriminalising sleeping rough as well. Let's get a voice note from Jill.
What the hell is Rain on about? She's going to decriminalise sleeping rough, sleeping in the street, or she's going to criminalise begging? Well, come on, 9 times out of 10, the people that are begging are the people that are homeless and sleeping on the street. So you might be allowed now to sleep on the street, but you can't beg to get money to feed yourself while you're sleeping on the street. What the hell is going on?
Talk about joined up thinking. You know, Angela Rayner hasn't got a clue. So she's going to give £39 billion to a load of builders who are going to build houses, which they would have done anyway, but now they're going to use our money to build the houses, and then they're going to make a profit out of our money that we get nothing from at all, because they'll be giving the houses away to people who are born in foreign countries, because they're coming here in their droves, because they get a free house. What's going on? It's costing £3.6 billion, according to the Telegraph this morning, to house a load of people in London in what is called discounted housing, which is effectively social housing. They're getting to the front of the queue quicker because they're not British. According to Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, the research in the Telegraph shows how the huge costs of mass low-skilled migration are often hidden from the public. When you lift up the bonnet, it's clear the level and composition of immigration have been hugely economically harmful to this country for decades. Brilliant. Well done, Sakir, and well done, Angela Rayner, and well done, Rachel Thieves. What a fantastic operation you're running. You might as well be running a criminal enterprise. You know, the mafia stole more people and made more money than you, but they were better at it. That's the problem. You know, this lot are completely useless at being racketeers, but it is a racket nevertheless. 7:39.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:41. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock when it's time for Julie Hartley-Brewer. Lots of you got things to say on driverless cars. Norm says this: driverless taxis, who cleans out the rubbish left by punters? Including David Lammy, of course. Who cleans up the sick on a Friday and Saturday night? Who talks to the elderly passengers we pick up? Who helps wheelchair passengers? Who reports safeguarding issues? Etc., etc., etc. All very good points. There's no way, says Linda in the West Midlands, I would ever get in a driverless car. It took me a year to get used to my reversing camera on my own car. I swore I'd never trust it. However, I love it now. Maybe in time, when driverless cars are proven safe, I would think about it. Yeah, and one here from Jenny, I think it is, who basically says the only driverless cars, the only city driverless cars would work in is Milton Keynes, because it's the only city based on the grid system like the United States. Well, funnily enough, Glasgow is actually built on a grid system, and in fact, when New York was designed and New York was kind of created, Manhattan particularly, they used the same plan that Glasgow had for a grid. I'm not sure many people knew about that. Let's talk to Eugene Kontorovich, though. He's a professor at the Scalia Law School and Heritage Foundation. You might remember we spoke about this in the first hour. The UK has imposed, via David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, sanctions on 2 Israeli ministers for, in their words, inciting violence. Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. They say they've been inciting violence against Palestinians. Let's have a look at what David Lammy said.
These 2 individuals, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, have been inciting violence against Palestinian people for months and months and months. They have been encouraging egregious abuses of human rights.
I mean, Professor Eugene, good morning to you.
Morning.
I'm not sure why David Lammy decided he wanted to impose sanctions on foreign government ministers. Is it any of his business?
Listen, the UK cares about human rights, which is why it's so surprising that it's sanctioning these 2 gentlemen as Israel fights a war for its survival. And I think it's legitimate for the UK to care about human rights, which makes it very strange that they're not sanctioning the government of Qatar and countries that are truly abusing it. One of the things notable about the sanctions announcement is they didn't mention what the statements of these gentlemen that got them sanctioned were.
Right.
Because when you look at it, they haven't actually said anything so terrible. It seems that what's gotten them in trouble, they have clearly never incited violence in the sense of calling people to hurt for others. If you look at the sanctions announcement, it says they're being sanctioned for disagreeing with the 2-state solution.
Right.
After October 7th, 2023, 90% of the Israeli public disagrees, the left-wing parties, and they should sanction, perhaps, President Trump.
Right.
President Trump disagrees with the 2-state solution. Also, they support President Trump's plan for Gaza, which includes allowing people who want to flee Hamas, people who want to flee the war, to let them leave. Now, I understand the government in the UK loves migrants and refugees, except if they are running away from Gaza. No, then they have to stay. So, in other words, they're being sanctioned for supporting President Trump's plan. Does that mean that the UK is going to sanction President Trump next?
Yeah. It seems to me just to be a very ridiculous manoeuvre, which is a bit of a virtue signalling scenario for the backbenchers of the Labour Party, who are, and I'm going to say it, still, I'm afraid, anti-Semites.
Yes, they are basically upset that Israel is continuing to fight Hamas.
Yeah.
And so they're sanctioning Israeli government leaders for tweets. And I'd like to say, probably the greatest Briton who ever lived, Winston Churchill, would certainly be sanctioned by this government. He said about Germany, if they continue to bomb our cities, we will make Berlin a heap of ruins.
Yeah.
Bomber Commander Arthur Harris said the Germans have sown the wind and they will reap the whirlwind.
Yeah.
All of this is far harsher than anything these gentlemen have said, and the notion that there's some kind of tweet etiquette for government ministers fighting a war of existential survival or to face international sanctions is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think this is part of the story here is migration, And the government, like the government in France, seems to be catering to people who have come to the UK from Muslim countries. And they're a problem, and this is for the government. This is a way to appease them.
Yeah, and that is a big problem, I think. Talking of laughable situations, Greta Thunberg arrived in Israel yesterday, claimed that she had been kidnapped, which, of course, was also ridiculous. The picture of her being given a sandwich. Here's what she has to say about being detained.
On international waters, we were illegally attacked and kidnapped by Israel and taken against our will to Israel, where we were detained. And then some of us deported, some are still there. There are very big uncertainties because it was quite chaotic and uncertain. So I don't really know what's going on. I haven't had a phone for many days.
How did the Israelis treat you? We saw them giving out sandwiches on their social media. How did
Yeah, they probably have posted lots of PR stunt videos. As I said, I have not seen anything, but they did an illegal act by kidnapping us on international waters and against our will, bringing us to Israel, keeping us in the bottom of the boat, not letting us getting out and so on.
I mean, what a complete idiot that woman is. Here's what Donald Trump had to say.
President, do you have a message for Greta Thunberg, and did she come up on your call with the Prime Minister today?
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually, but I saw what happened. She's certainly different.
Do you think
anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class. That's my primary recommendation for her.
I mean, it's hard to believe that people like Greta Thunberg and those who support what she did actually exist, isn't it?
Greta is, of course, ridiculous, but I think in what she's saying here, it's symbolic of the entire far-left attack on Israel. She says she was kidnapped. Now, she was intercepted while trying to run a blockade.
Right.
Now, the people who were kidnapped was hundreds of Israelis, children, babies, Holocaust survivors, were kidnapped and put in dungeons where they remain today. That is kidnapping and abduction. But we see that the attacks on Israel are always inversions of what happened to Israel, to the Jews. The Jews suffered genocide, so Israel has to be accused specifically of genocide.
Yeah.
Right? Jews have been kidnapped and are still being kept in dungeons in Gaza. That's why Greta has to say she was kidnapped. Right? It's a 360 reversal of reality.
Yeah, it really is. It's quite shocking. I never thought we'd be having those conversations. But Eugene, thank you very much indeed. Eugene Kontorovich, there, professor at the Scalia Law School and the Heritage Foundation. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State for the USA, had this to say: the United States condemns the sanctions imposed by the governments of the United Kingdom, Canada, Norway, New Zealand and Australia on 2 sitting members of the Israeli cabinet. So, once again, you know, David Lammy and Keir Starmer making enemies of the US. For what, exactly? Absolutely unbelievable. We're going to get a voice note quickly from Pete.
Who are these new homes for, Mike? This £39 billion investment for affordable homes, because it won't be affordable by British people. They'll just be given to all the Tom, Dick and Harrys who get off boats and come into this country and get put in a nice hotel before given a nice cosy house. Meanwhile, British people get nothing except grief from this government.
Grief indeed. Coming up, Catherine Burble-Singh is here, our favourite head teacher. She's from Mycella Community School. She's going to talk about kids and phones and what you should do. This is Talk.
thing that disappoints me, not just about Ed, but Keir's been questioned on it as well, and I spoke about this with someone yesterday who from the Tory side. I think people would have a lot more respect for politicians if they said sorry sometimes and said, you know what, I called it wrong. Up. I'm human. Yeah. You know, we've got to do better. I'm really sorry. We were very lucky to have a very mild winter, by the way. Could have been miles worse, but I'm sorry for the fear and the whatever, and I've called this wrong, and we're going to put it right, and we're going to do it this way.
Harry Cole said last week to me, if you bleed for months, it's no good. You just come out there, put your hands up and go, I messed up, I got it wrong, I'm changing it, I'm really, really sorry.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:52. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Good morning, Mike, says Stuart. Do you have a video of the Mauritius government and the Mauritian people saying thank you to the British taxpayers? I don't, actually, but maybe we'll get one. We'll commission one. Why not? Let's talk now, though, to Catherine Birble-Singh, CBE, founder and head teacher of the Michaela Community School, and somebody we talk to often here on this show, The Home of Common Sense, because she's absolutely full of it. We need to talk about phones and children. Catherine, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Nice to see you. The issue has come up again, hasn't it? Because the government is proposing the possibility that that they're going to try and limit phone use by children outside of whether or not their parents want them to use the phones or not. Is that viable, do you think?
Yes, well, I don't just think it's viable. I think it's absolutely necessary. And I know lots of free-thinking people will think, how can you be doing that? But, you know, we already do it. We ban alcohol. The state bans alcohol for children, and sex and marriage and smoking and driving and a whole bunch of things. And that's good. And the reason why that's good is because head teachers, for instance, don't have the problem of thinking, are they bringing in bottles of vodka in their bags? But because it's banned for everybody. And then it just becomes part of the normal culture that children wouldn't bring phones to school and also are not on their phones at home. Right. Now, I know we're not used to that. And so we think, oh my goodness, doesn't it seem to be overreach of the state to be banning phones? But the thing is, without that, kids, we are breaking their brains. Right now, my assemblies all this week are about smartphones with the kids and saying to them, you need to get off them. Now, we have a great system here at Michaela. We have a digital detox drop-off system. Right now, I have a safe filled with phones because it's the exam season, and therefore, those are our pips. The kids are going in. Because it's exam season, the kids are willingly, they're saying, please help me. I'm addicted. Please take my phone. And I don't think people realize the extent to which children's brains are broken. They're not able to develop their concentration and their thinking skills if they're on those phones all of the time. And when people complain about Gen Z and say, oh my goodness, aren't they different? They're not sure how to own things and how to be accountable and how to strategize. I think that's because they were online far too much as children. And we need to take it seriously as a country. And I think that's why head teachers and parents, often parents say, oh my goodness, I can't take the phone, because people then say parents need to parent. Yeah. You know, it's really, really hard to take that phone away and not give your child a phone.
I mean, I've spoken to parents who say, you know, we have a basket at the door, and when you come home, everybody puts their phone in the basket. But that's pretty rare, I think, and a lot of people would say that many of them couldn't do that because, you know, they use their phone for work, or they might want to be contacted by somebody from work or something like that. But, you know,
poorer families, they're working. Yeah. They're not at home. The kids are there. They're not able to be there with the basket saying, give me the phone. Yeah. So the middle classes really need to think about the position that we're putting working class families that don't have the privilege of being able to help their kids at home deal with the tech.
Yeah. But I guess, I mean, if they can afford to buy the phone, then they should be able to know how to deal with the phone, if you know what I mean. And I mean, adults are probably just as bad as children in this regard. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I'm probably as guilty as anybody, you know, because I'm reading all the time. I'm looking at, you know, articles on the Times website. I'm looking at articles on the Telegraph website. You know, whenever I have a spare moment, that's what I'm doing. And I mean, I don't even know how that's messing up my head.
And it is, but nowhere near as much when your brain is growing. Your brain is already sorted, and you already reached adulthood without that constant on the phone, you know, pop-ups, breaking your concentration, not being able to concentrate for more than 15 seconds. That's how bad it is now.
Yeah.
The impact is huge across our society. And I do think government needs to intervene, and we need to. Well, we are having the national conversation, which I'm so happy about, because I have been campaigning for this for many years.
Well, this is why we wanted to talk to you. But I mean, how would it actually work, do you think? Because if they were to say, look, as all children up to the age of 16 or 18 or whatever it is can only use a phone for 2 hours a day, how would they physically make that happen?
Well, I'd like them just to ban it altogether.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's right. If you say 2 hours a day, we don't say all children are allowed to smoke for 2 hours a day, or you're allowed to have sex for 2 hours a day, do we? We say no. There are some things that we need to protect our children from, and that is our role as adults. It's our duty, and we need to seize that duty and take responsibility for the situation that we're causing for our children.
And I mean, but I mean, I said at the start, is it viable? Is it realistic? Can it be done?
They would have said the same thing about drinking alcohol and smoking in the day. Can it be done? Well, it can be done. And then it becomes normal and nobody really questions it.
Yeah.
So, yes, it can be done, and it has to be done if we want to save our children.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a big step to take. I mean, nobody else in the world, I don't think, has really done it. No,
that's not true. They've done it in Australia. There are other countries. No, they are doing it one by one. The countries are coming round to this idea of banning social media. In Australia, they've banned social media. They haven't banned the phone, but that is one step. Oh my goodness, I would take that. Ban social media for children, because it's the social media. Because what people do is they say, oh, but look, children can have you know, you can do research for a project at school and so on. Yes, but that's not what they're doing. They're on Snapchat, they're on Instagram. But I must run to assembly so I can tell our children.
Yes, you must. Absolutely. Okay. Great to see you. Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Catherine Birble-Singh, CB, founder and head teacher of the Michaela Community School. Absolutely brilliant woman. She says it can be done. I don't know. I'm not so sure. We'll take your views on that as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Everybody wants to get their children safe, and everybody wants to keep their children off some of the dreadful stuff that's available on their phones and on the internet at home. But how to do it is the big question. Brian from Spain says, Mike, so Heidi Alexander is advocating for more job losses, this time taxi drivers. What is wrong with these people? Can't we have automated prime ministers, or have we already got them by stealth? Well, you may well say that. We'll talk about driverless cars. We'll talk some more about the dreaded cost of the migrant problem in this country. And Rachel Reeves and her spending review. Where on earth is she getting the money? She doesn't really have any. And what she does have is all ours. Most of the rest of it is all borrowed. What on earth is going on? Has there ever been a less popular government than this one? We'll be back after the news. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people, because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humsley Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up, it's 3 minutes past 8, and of course, this is where the nation comes to talk. The home of common sense at Morning Glory, with you every single weekday morning, 4 glorious hours from 6 until 10. We've got all sorts of great messages coming in. We've been talking about driverless cars. We've been talking about driverless government because they don't seem to be knowing in any way, shape or form where on earth they're going. Richard on the Costa del Sol says this: can we put a travel ban on dimwit Lammy? That will save us all a fortune. Yeah, good idea. David Lammy, of course, up against it this morning because he's been criticised by Marco Rubio, no less, who's the Secretary of State for the US of A, working in the Donald Trump administration in the White House. He says basically that he condemns Britain's action in sanctioning 2 Israeli ministers. I mean, after all, what on earth has it got to do with David Lammy, or indeed this British government, what individual ministers in foreign governments have to say about issues which are very close to their hearts? You know, the idea of sanctioning them is completely and utterly ridiculous. Esther McVeigh's coming up, from former Minister for Common Sense. She's been obviously making noises in Parliament this week, and also writing about Rachel Reeves as well, because the big spending review coming up later on today. We're going to hear how she's going to splurge over £100 billion worth of our money, because let's not forget, it is our money, on a load of housing. 39 billion going to housing. Who's going to get those houses? It's all affordable housing. It's going to be commercial companies that benefit from it, and it's probably more than likely going to be immigrants who are going to benefit from the houses that are actually being built, not British people. And that, I'm sure, is not what you wanted them to do when you elected them as the government of this land. Also, 30 billion is going to be put into the NHS, but even the NHS say it won't make any difference. There's not much point. Don't worry about it. Less than 1 billion is going to be spent on immigration and illegal migrants, trying to stop them from coming in. And that, I have to tell you, is a very, very bad idea indeed. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Good morning, Mike. It's Darren here from Carmarthenshire. Hope you're well. I just want to give Sir Keir Starmer a little bit of credit, Mike. He's out there creating wealth, creating energy, creating growth for the economy, Mike, and creating lots and lots of jobs. In fact, the latest figures have just come out, Mike, from the Labour government, and they've estimated, Mike, that they're going to be creating 17 billion new jobs, Mike. That's right, 17 billion new jobs for the UK. So they're out there creating wealth, Mike. Give them your vote at the next election.
Darren, thank you very much indeed. I mean, you might as well make it up as you go along, because that's what they're doing. They are actually creating some happiness there around the world. The people of Mauritius very happy this morning. They've woken up to the news that thanks to the Chagos Islands deal and all the money that we are giving them to take the Chagos Islands off our hands when we didn't even know we wanted them to, 81% of the people in Mauritius are going to pay no income tax at all. Thank you very much indeed to Keir Starmer. Let's give him a round of applause. Well done, Sir Keir, you complete and utter numpty. Rodney, you plonker. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Jeff in EC1 says, why is Starmer putting out a video with an inane German techno beat? I wondered what had happened to Kraftwerk. Yeah, I know, it does sound a bit like that, doesn't it? And they're decriminalising sleeping rough, by the way. Don't ask me why. Carl in Essex says, sleeping rough is decriminalised in preparation for the flood of migrants that will be setting up tent camps around London. Yeah, well, they're already doing it. They say they're going to decriminalise sleeping rough, and at the same time, they're going to crack down on beggars. It beggars belief, doesn't it? Let's talk to Esther McVeigh, former Minister for Common Sense, still an MP, of course. Esther, very good morning to you.
Oh, good morning, Mike. Great to hear your cheerful voice, despite what's going on in this country.
Well, it is amazing, isn't it? I mean, I see that in your column in the Express, you said that you were laughing at the idea of Rachel from Accounts being compared by Peter Kyle, the technology minister, to Steve Jobs. I mean, I like you, I'd put out a tweet saying it's more like Rachel No Jobs, isn't it? I mean, she's destroying the jobs market.
Exactly. Destroyer of jobs is what her name should be, and also collapser of the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, In less than a year, they have absolutely collapsed the economy. And we're looking at, they were told, they were warned, should you put taxes on jobs, like anything, if you make it more expensive, jobs will disappear. Though it seemed to have come as some almighty shock, yesterday's unemployment figures, highest now for nearly 4 years.
Yeah.
The number of people who are coming off payroll, 100,000 just in the month of May. And let me tell you this, 1 million more people claiming universal credit in the last year. That's 39,000 people a week who are new claimants. Yet she didn't realise this. If she taxed jobs, this would be what had happened to jobs. We've either got the two thickest people as Prime Minister and Chancellor, or it is a deliberate ploy to get everybody on benefits and everybody state dependent so they vote Labour.
Well, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Because they continue to lie to us. They continue to put out these statements saying, you know, the plan is working, you know, this is what our change means. And you kind of going, the plan's clearly not working. How can you keep saying the plan is working and expect everybody to believe it? You know, he talks about Sizewell C as if it didn't start under the Tories. You know, they're suddenly, you know, putting a spade in the ground and creating a nuclear power plant. You know, people have been working there for 2 years. You know, similarly, you know, they're not stopping the boats. They're not putting, in fact, if anything, they're going to spend 39 billion on the housing front for affordable housing. An awful lot of that will be occupied by people who are not from this country.
Yeah, you're right. They're re-announcing things that were already happening under a previous government.
Yeah.
They're finding money that we didn't know existed before, so the magic money tree is back. And this is because she's had to lock horns with the rest of her cabinet ministers who all wanted to spend more and more money, which they don't have. But they are Orwellian speak. They talk with forked tongue.
Yeah.
We have a push-me, pull-me government. We've got the ideology that they want less people in prison. And remember, they've got a prison minister who said only a third of people should be in prison.
Yeah.
2/3 should be out, which they're doing. They're letting people out of prison. And 43,000 fewer people will be going to prison every year.
Yeah.
So they're doing that. And then on the other hand, the police are saying, how are we going to manage with this? We need more police officers now to police the streets as you've let all criminals out. So every action they do costs money. Yet they sort of laud themselves that they've done wonderful things. I think one of your viewers called in earlier. They've got rid of 100,000 jobs from the oil industry,
Yes.
and they're giving us 10,000 in renewable energy. They are bonkers.
They really are, and yet they continue to kind of try and convince everybody that they've got a plan, you know, and there is literally nothing. I mean, I'm getting more and more messages now every single day, and increasing numbers of people just saying, I've never hated a government this much. You know, people didn't like the Tories, they didn't hate them. You know, this lot have created a real problem with ill feeling in this country, and people are really hopping mad about everything that they do. I mean, when we see the story this morning that, you know, over in Mauritius, you know, things are going really well, going so well, in fact, thanks to the Chagos Islands deal, that 81% of the public who are working down there are going to have no income tax whatsoever.
Right, so this is an embarrassment. We thought it was an embarrassment because they gave up some of our territory, to which we then had to pay 30 billion to get it back.
Right.
It also impinged on our nation's security. Now we're hearing Mauritians are going to get a tax reduction, just as we have had tax increases. And no doubt after this splurge today in Reeve's spending review, we will get more tax increases later in the year that we cannot afford.
No, exactly right. And I mean, we are going to be told, we think, in the autumn of this year, when she makes her budget statement for real, that all of this money that they're splurging, over 100 billion quid, is going to have to be paid for somehow. And they haven't really got it, have they? Because most of it's borrowed, or most of it's invented. It's kind of quantitative easing all over again. So the thing that puzzles me, and I always get this wrong, is what else can they actually tax? What else can they squeeze out of us that they haven't already got?
Well, she put herself in a straitjacket, didn't she, saying...
I wish she would.
What she wouldn't tax, and she said, oh, it won't be on VAT, it won't be on income tax, it won't be on national insurance, but she broke that one by putting on employers' national insurance. So she's in a straitjacket. So I'm thinking, what is she going to tax? You're quite right. What is she going to tax? Now, are they going to give things away? Because we're not sure what they've given away in trade deals. We don't know what they've given away to China to be able to have their embassy in London. So I think understanding what they're giving away, because I don't know where they can tax, because they can't tax business anymore. And then interestingly, when I stood up in the House, when obviously the embarrassing U-turn that Rachel Reeves didn't even come to the House for, and that was on the winter fuel payment, I'm saying, look, you need to get people back into work. You've done one U-turn. Let's do a U-turn now so you don't destroy farms on inheritance tax, and you need to do a U-turn on national insurance contributions to get people into work. Interestingly, all her backbenchers, what did they want? They wanted U-turns on the two-child
benefit
cap. They wanted that, and also disability benefit changes. So they, as a party, just want more and more spent on benefits, where really, if she was going to save money now and not tax the public anymore, there is none there. She needs to get people into work and cut the benefits bill. Because put it this way, if she got it back to the levels I had it when I was Secretary of State in 2019, she'd be saving 49 billion by the end of this fiscal period.
Yeah, I think we've got that clip of you talking this week in Houses of Parliament. Have a look. No, we'll come back to it. Never mind. Somebody's kiboshed it. I'm not having that. What about this other thing on the front of the Telegraph? Angela Rayner wants to drop the law on rough sleepers. What's that all about? Why does she want to do that? No, it doesn't seem to make any sense to me. On the one hand, she says she wants to crack down on beggars, because there's a large number of, I don't know whether you've noticed it in London, but there seems to be larger numbers of organised begging gangs now doing the rounds in various parts of the centre of the city. But she also wants to decriminalise rough sleeping. What's that about?
Well, this is another disaster, isn't it? This allows those beggars to be moved on. And you're quite right. We've now got people setting up camps in some of the most beautiful parks and some of the most expensive parts of the country. We've seen there in Park Lane. Now, who are these? It didn't even seem to me they were British citizens making camp, setting up their home in these most expensive parts of London. No, they need to be moved on. This is another mistake from this government, and they seem to tinker with things they can do, which causes more problems, and not get on with the nuts and bolts of this country. And all of this, all it does is add more pull factors to this country. Why illegal immigrants are coming over? They can now live in the most exclusive parts of London. They get given hotel accommodation. They get given money. She needs to stop all of this. We need to stop illegal immigration. We need Rwanda back, so people who are here illegally can be sent to a third country. Now, this is another disaster from another numpty in the cabinet.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I think we've got that clip now. Let's have a look.
I appreciate this has been a humiliation for the Chancellor, and her credibility is intact. No wonder she's not here today to announce her own U-turn. But now that she and the government has got a taste for climb down, can I urge them, through the Minister who unfortunately drew the short straw today, to reverse the equally ridiculous national insurance contribution rises, which is destroying jobs, and the inheritance tax changes, which is destroying farms and family businesses.
It's a very good point. Tony says this, you know, Mike, someone needs to ask Rachel Reeves straight, how are you funding these projects, and how are you justifying spending $4.7 billion on migrant hotels while taking $1 billion off pensioners? And how do you justify paying the Chagos Islands, but you get nothing for our farmers? You know, all of these are choices that they've made. You know, they told us they were difficult choices that they had to be made. I mean, she couldn't even bring herself to apologise for getting it wrong. You know, she said, oh, we now are able to do this and reverse it because the economy's better. Well, it's not. The economy's actually a lot worse, isn't it?
Well, I'd say she's collapsed economy, and I'd call her Rachel Rabbit in the headlights. She doesn't know what she's doing, I don't think. So she's desperately floundering for things to do. And when she goes back and looks at the books of the country, she will now see we're paying $100 billion a year in debt repayments. That's twice defence and more than sort of the education budget. This is what she needs to get down, because if we're not growing the country now, expanding the economy more than we're paying on debt, this is a tipping point. This is where the economy is no longer stable, and I'm afraid that is where she's going. And when you see unemployment going up at the rate it is, and obviously that's the tax, that's what's paid in, that's what's giving you growth, I'm afraid, like I said, she's collapsed the country, but we're absolutely at a tipping point. They need to be chucked out of government as soon as possible, honestly.
And as if to make matters worse, the front page of The Sun today has got a story that says the Red Arrows are running out of planes. I mean, if you ever wanted some kind of, I don't know, time capsule to show you how bad things are, England have lost for the first time in their history to Senegal, the first time England ever lost to an African nation, 3 goals to 1, and now the Red Arrows haven't got enough planes to make the Diamond 9 formation.
Do you know, when I was a kid, I used to love, it'd be like once a year you'd see them fly over, and you knew it was the best in British engineering. You knew it was the best of this sort of Air Force. And it was just a wonderful, spectacular sort of vision to behold. They'd fly over the palace and all of this. To know that we can't even keep the Red Arrows. As you said, we can't do the Diamond 9 formation. We're down to 6. It is just a real embarrassment, I think. And all these wonderful things are crumbling, and all we see growing is unemployment, illegal migration, and homeless people on the streets. It's a disaster.
It is. It's all kind of collapsing in on itself. Esther, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Esther McVeigh, former Minister for Common Sense there, talking a great deal of it. Let's get a voice note from Judith.
Good morning, Mike. It's Judy from Altofts, West Yorkshire. Rachel Reeves is going to spend billions on housing. Where's the money coming from? I thought we were broke. We're up to us neck in debt. The first thing they say to you when you're up to your neck in debt, you stop spending and start paying your debts off. I still think they're doing a scorched earth for whoever gets in after them, because they know they're not going to get in again at next general election. I think they're going to make it that bad. Whoever does get in are going to have to spend years tackling what they've left for them. It's a disgrace. Thank you.
Judith, a very sensible woman, as ever. Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts there. She's right. Surely to heavens they're not doing that, are they? I think they genuinely are so bad they don't even know what to do. I think they've actually lost the plot. I'm not sure they ever had one. Remember, these were the people that came in and said they had a plan. They were the people that said that everything was costed. Everything was absolutely and utterly sorted out. They were ready to govern in every department. Not in some departments, not, we have to lift up the bonnet and have a look and see how bad things are. None of that. No. They knew everything that they were going to do, and they had a plan, and they had costings, and they'd got budgets, and everything was sorted out, and they were going to revolutionise the country. Well, they've certainly done that. But not in a good way. John from Poole says this. Morning, Mike. Excellent show today, as always. Mike, there is a book for sale called Economics for Dummies. Please can someone buy a copy and donate it to our Rachel Thieves? Maybe it will help. I doubt it, though. And Mike in Woodford Green says, my solution for limiting my children's use of phones was simple. I confiscated their chargers and let them charge their phones once or twice a week. That instantly reduced the time they spent on their phones. Keep up the good work. That's a good idea. This, of course, is Morning Glory. This is the home of common sense. We've got much more to talk about, including, of course, the need for driverless cars. I don't think we need them. Phil says this. Let's have driverless trains before driverless cars. The technology already exists. Well, that would save us a few quid, wouldn't it? Get rid of all the as-left drivers and just replace them with a robot. Why not? 8:20.
You know all those people who bang on the doors and put leaflets through the doors and do market stalls? I think they are so undervalued, actually, in most political parties. So I want to get round. I know how hard it is to campaign, so I want to get round and look after them and also act as the conduit back to the professional party. Now, in terms of talk, I'm delighted to say that after the conversation I had this morning, I will remain part of the talk TV and radio family. I think it's unlikely that I will do my weekend breakfast show.
OK, well, that'll be very bad news for an awful lot of your audience.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8 to 23. I'm Mike Graham. Lots of you have got things to say about all manner of things, including this morning, the state of the nation. Here's one from... where is it? Ivor. Starmer said it was necessary to pay the Chagos Islands all these billions because they would cost so much to administer. In that case, how comes they're giving it to Mauritians as tax cuts? More lies, lies and lies from Keith Starlin. Well, everything he says turns out not to be true. If you remember, he said it even last week in Prime Minister's Questions. We've got another episode of that coming up today. He said that China was against the deal. China actually came out the week before and said they welcomed the deal. Which gives you even more reason to be concerned because, of course, China have got their mitts all over the South Pacific and they've got their fingers in all sorts of pies in the African continent. So, you know, the idea that China is not happy about this deal and is somehow against it is complete and utter nonsense. Let's get a voice note from Richard on Sadiq Khan.
Morning, Mike. Richard from York. As if things can't get any worse, but seeing yesterday Sadiq Khan getting knighted by the king. Oh, dear, give me strength. Honestly, you just feel like packing your bags, leaving the country and heading to Mauritius because there's just nothing in this country which is right at present. Have a great day, Mike. Take care.
Richard, you're absolutely right. Sadiq Khan, of course, came out of the knighting ceremony and said that, King Charles apparently said to him, I'm sorry it's taken us so long. I mean, I don't know if he said that, but if that's what he did say, it's not the wisest thing that the king has come out with. Everybody hates Sadiq Khan. I'm not sure if they hate him more than Keir Starmer, but they certainly are running neck and neck for Plank of the Year. I'd have to say that. Let's talk to Ryan Saby, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun, of course, because a big piece in The Sun today about the blob. A big interview with Harry Cole did with Simon Case, the head of the Civil Service, formerly head of the Civil Service, for Never Mind the Ballots. He basically said it doesn't matter who's in power, Britain's in crisis and it needs fixing. And Simon Case, Ryan, very good morning to you, hints at the fact that basically the blob is really in charge of this country, and no matter who gets elected every single time there's an election, a general election that is, that it doesn't make any difference because they have to get past these faceless bureaucrats.
Yeah, that's right. Reading this, Mike, is actually quite worrying. You know, you've got someone here who has been at the centre of things for the best part of the last decade or so, whether it's in Number 10. He obviously worked close with the royals, and he knows how the establishment, he knows how the civil service, and he knows what he calls the blob, how it works. And he seems to make the point that it doesn't matter who is in power, what their policies are, what their manifesto is. They seem to find a handbrake on that from whatever they want to do from across government, whether it's health, defence, whatever. But there's this handbrake that's just put on by the civil service. Yeah. So they can come up with all these big ideas. And he make the quote there, really interesting quote. You have this grand, brand new, sparkling idea. You want to put into power. You've just come into power. But every time you look at someone in the civil service, they just sandpaper away at it. That every single department you go to, it gets chiseled away. And by the time you come to put this policy into fruition, into actually making it work, you're actually left with nothing. And I think that one of the key points he makes in this is that when people vote at a general election, they vote for change. So if you voted Conservative back in 2010 or Labour in 2024, you want change. But actually, whichever politician is in power, that change is very, very difficult to achieve.
Well, that's right. We keep being told, of course, that the plan for change is underway. Keir Starmer reminds us of it pretty much with every single video that he puts out, and they put out 2 or 3 of those a day, possibly more. But the change that's happening in Britain seems to be, at the moment, a change for the worse. You know, we've got unemployment going up. We've got more and more people losing their jobs. We've got the economy going faster down the gurgler than you could say Rachel Reeves. You've got no real prospect on the horizon of any investment coming into the country as people leave it in droves, people leaving the country to go and live elsewhere, like places like Dubai and Italy and Portugal and the United States of America. I mean, there isn't anything good going on right now that the government can point to when they say, oh, things are on the up, but they keep saying it nonetheless.
Yeah, no, exactly. Every single interview you hear from a government minister, it doesn't matter which department they're in, they always talk about this plan for change. It's all like change. But the trouble is, there's this big, big disconnect from what they say and what they're actually going to do. And I think the trouble is, it's so much short term that the long-term picture it's just very, very difficult to get that change when you're working to that sort of 4 or 5 year time frame. You know, we've got to have elections every 4 or 5 years, but actually sort of Britain needs a sort of big long-term plan. And I think when you've got politicians chasing their tails, trying to deal with the problems of today, it's really, really difficult. And Simon Case makes that point. So it's almost as if you've got to rip up the whole system and start again.
Right. But, of course, that's what they were supposed to be doing. I mean, they came into power saying that they were prepared for government. They said that they were ready in every single department of state to hit the ground running. They had a plan. It was all costed. They knew exactly what they were doing. And, of course, as soon as they got in, they went, oh, crikey, that's not what we thought was going to happen. And now they've been trying to recover from that, and they still haven't recovered from it. And, if anything, they've made it worse. Let's have a quick look at a little clip from Simon Case talking to Harry Cole.
Say this, but did you say this when you're on the inside?
I'm not going to go into what I said on the inside, but I'll tell you what I think, and you can draw your own conclusions. You can't have elections where no matter who you vote for, you just keep getting the same answer.
Yes.
So you have to change this question. We have to put... We love to kind of rib and tear strips off our politicians. Actually, I think we go too far on that. These are people who put themselves forward to try and make this country a better place, and they deserve our support for doing it. And what we should be trying to do is make sure that whatever platform they stand on, whoever you vote for, if they come into power, they've got the space to do it. And a lot of that, for me, is about stripping back the powers that have been handed to all sorts of... not all of them are quangos, but all sorts of interest groups, and bring these back into
what we might call the blob. Do you recognise that?
I used to be in charge of a big bit of
the blob.
You blob, and as you probably know, I hate that phrase because I think it's unbelievably dehumanising.
Yes.
But I do understand
where it's coming from.
That there is this kind of faceless, to many people and many politicians, faceless sort of set of organisations that seems to be holding power no matter what you want to do.
It's fairly typical, I suppose, of Britain in the way that it's governed, for the guy who used to be in charge of the blob, as he doesn't like to call it, saying that the blob is a big problem. And well, when he was running it, maybe he could have made it less of a problem.
Yeah, no, it does beg that question as well. But I think when you're in government, you're trying to make things work. You're trying to make all the departments sing. But I think it's interesting when Simon Case, he's been out of government a few months or so, that actually he can take a big picture look at it and actually realise that things aren't going right. Now, I'm sure he had all these frustrations when he was actually in government, but it's only now that actually perhaps he can actually advise those people who are in government and actually just say, this is how you need to do it. And he seems to be setting out that prospectus just there. But I do think there is deep, deep frustration. He talks about how we should have people who want to strive to become Prime Minister or in the Cabinet. The way the political system works and the whole sort of Westminster bubble, you wonder whether it's actually just putting off sort of the brightest and the best talents from actually entering frontline politics.
Yeah, it's a very worrying situation. Ryan, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Big piece in The Sun today by Harry Cole. An interview with Simon Case, who used to be, of course, the top Mandarin in the government. And even he says it doesn't matter who's in power. Britain is in crisis and it needs fixing. And he says the voters will be more and more angry as time goes on. And he's absolutely right, particularly this morning, angry about the Chagos Islands and the deal that was done by Keir Starmer, which has resulted in the Chagos Islands giving Mauritius a bumper kind of tax break, because it means basically the £30 billion that we as a government have sent them. That's all our money. That's money that we've paid in taxes, by the way. It's going to Mauritius, and the Mauritians are now being told 81% of them who are in work will not have to pay any income tax at all. Marvellous, isn't it? Absolutely marvellous. Now, we've also got a new way that you can contact us and a new way that you can contribute to the show. And we're going to read out some letters every single day now from The Sun, their letters page, the page where you tell Britain what you think. And an awful lot of people writing in about Rachel Reeves. It's good news that Chancellor Rachel Reeves has restored the winter fuel payment to pensioners with an annual income of less than £35,000. But she needs to apologise for putting elderly people through the misery of cutting it last winter in the first place. This is from Gillian in Nottinghamshire. In Britain, we seem to look after everyone but our own people, spending money to house migrants in hotels, but not keeping our tax-paying elderly warm in their own homes. The government should be ashamed of themselves. And Gordon says, now that Rachel Reeves is reversing last year's decision to remove the winter fuel allowance from pensioners, is she going to reimburse those affected? Perhaps I shouldn't hold my breath. Well, quite right. It is absolutely ridiculous. We'll be doing that every single day going forward, as we do. This one from Ernie, who says, good morning, Mike. The reason this government is decriminalising rough sleeping is because it knows it can't keep the thousands of illegal migrants in hotels forever, and that our city centres are going to be flooded with rough sleepers pretty soon, and they can't arrest them all. Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a great look, is it? And when you go around the city, certainly in London, there are more and more of these little tented cities where people are sleeping rough because they either can or they can't be bothered finding anywhere else to live. And many of them are these gangs of beggars as well. Shocking state of affairs. Peter says this, morning, Mike, I'm amazed how Starmer and Miliband are making it sound like they've just decided on Sizewell C. I live in Suffolk and work has been going on for almost 2 years. Well, there you go. Well, because they just keep telling lies. That's the problem. Coming up, we're going to speak to Brigadier Ed Butler, former SAS commanding officer. I believe it's the first time a former SAS commanding officer has ever spoken publicly on broadcast, radio and television. We've got lots to talk to Brigadier Ed about. He's coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah. Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:35. I'm Mike Graham, with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Of course, it is time for the Home of Common Sense now to get more from you guys, because you know how to get in touch. It's 0344 499 1000 is the number. I'm delighted to say I'm joined this morning by Brigadier Ed Butler, former SAS commanding officer, who was in charge of the SAS, I think I'm right in saying, just around about the time of 9/11, into all of the it's stuff that went on in Afghanistan. You were the commanding officer of the SAS then. Which brings us to a lot of things to talk about, really, which I probably haven't got enough time to do all of it. But let's talk a bit about that, because there's been a lot of investigating going on into what happened in Afghanistan. Lots of accusations being made against people who were presumably doing their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you've got it in one there, Mike. You know, they were doing their jobs. They were very much tasked to go in, this is in 2010 to 2013, to take down the Taliban bomb-making machine.
Yeah.
We were losing, you know, a considerable number of British servicemen and women through IEDs, improvised explosive devices, and they were tasked by the MOD and the government to go in and put a stop to it. And that's exactly what they did. And the figures are very clear. 2008 to 2010, there were 168 fatalities, not to mention the hundreds of amputees caused by IEDs. And that figure by 2013 had dropped to 5. And very clear what they did there. Incredibly courageous to go in. The only alternative would have been to use drone strikes, which have been used in Iraq, and that would have led, I suggest, to many more civilian casualties than brave men going in on night raids to take down the leadership, the quartermasters, the bomb makers.
Right. Which must have been incredibly dangerous, as you say, a dangerous task for people to do. But for the people who join the armed forces and for people who could then move into the SAS as well, I guess that's what they've signed up for, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they are very professional, determined individuals, and they're very clear about what they need to do. And I think what angers me at the moment is there's a lot of very sensationalist reporting in the media, making allegations that the SES and SBS went rogue in Afghanistan and in Iraq. I think, you know, Mike, you know, there's been 2 inquiries already led by the Royal Military Police. Ben Wallace, the then Defence Minister, said no case to answer. The government decided to have a statutory inquiry led by Lord Haddon Cave, which is ongoing. And I think we should all respect an eminent KC to do his duty and come up with the findings. Because the challenge, and that what makes me cross, is that the serving men of the SAS and SBS and the veterans are not allowed to speak to the media and put their case across. So it's a very one-sided argument being put forward by people who weren't there and didn't understand the context of what our special forces were after.
And are many of these arguments and many of these kind of cases being brought by people who have got themselves some clever lawyers to say, you know, this is something terrible that was done against people that shouldn't have had it done against them, and we're going to blame you for it, basically? Is that kind of what's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot of lawyers, ambulance-chasing lawyers who are out there who are talking to people in Afghanistan and wider and trying to create a story, and that's my point.
And some business, presumably, for them.
And some business, but let the inquiry follow its course, and Lord Haddon Cave come up with his findings at the end. And if he finds a case to answer, then so be it. But don't hound people who are out there day and night defending our country, our national interests, while they've got a job to do, because they are really worried. But every time they pull the trigger, there's going to be a lawyer or the media coming after them 10 and 20 years' time. And it's not just the special forces. There's people in the wider army who are saying, hang on a minute, is this going to be the same for me? If they're chasing our elite forces, what about me as an ordinary serviceman or woman in the Army, Navy or Air Force?
And do you think the Army protects these people enough?
Personally, I don't think so. There is a wall of silence about actually protecting our servicemen and women. And the government, the MOD, needs to be seen to back our soldiers and servicemen all the way through, from cradle to grave.
The government says they do, of course. I mean, Keir Starmer's always coming out, and I'm not just picking on him, he happens to be the Prime Minister. Previous governments have done the same. They say that they back the armed forces and they back the veterans, but they don't do much for them. And a lot of the time, there's terrible stories like there are in Northern Ireland, which I know is a separate issue, but, you know, people talking 30, 40 years ago, having done things which are now being investigated and examined, and their lives being put on hold, and their kind of families absolutely on tenterhooks. They don't know whether they're going to be prosecuted, they don't know whether they're going to end up in jail, for basically doing what they were asked to do by their government, effectively.
They were doing their duty. And I think there is a difference between strategic words and actual physical action to back the members of your armed forces. And I'd like to see more of that.
Do you think there's a sense in the country as well where you get sort of hand-wringing types who don't understand what it is that you guys do? and what you did and how difficult that job is, one. But also, I said this yesterday, I was talking to Jeremy Kyle, you know, unfortunately, the SAS's job sometimes is to kill people. That's your job, right? So it's not just that, but there are times when that's what it is. And if you don't do it, then the country suffers, the armed forces suffer, you might suffer, you might be killed if you don't kill someone.
Yeah, I mean, the mission is not to necessarily go out and kill people, it is go out to complete a task.
Yeah.
And if there are state actors or non-state actors or terrorists who are going to do you harm and you can't detain them, then, there is going to be shots fired.
Yeah.
And that's what these, the special forces are trained to the very highest level to do that on a daily basis across the globe in protection of our national interests.
Right. And there is a recruitment problem now, isn't there? Do you think some of it is down to these types of investigations?
I think absolutely. I think there's a recruiting and there's a retention problem. I think the retention problem is much worse. We're losing more people out of the Army in particular and the RAF and Navy than we are able to recruit them. And I think one of those issues is because they are worried that the government is not going to have their backs when the going gets tough.
Yeah.
And 10, 20 years after the event, some lawyer or the media are going to come after and say, you didn't do the right thing.
Yes.
And they don't understand the context of why they were sent there, what the conditions were on the ground, what the enemy was doing, what the circumstances were. And that's really, really difficult. And as you say, it's hugely corrosive on morale and on the families. And if you're out on the front line now and you've got this hanging on your back, you're going to be distracted. And that's not good for anyone.
No, of course. And what do you make now of the situation with the Defence Review and the statement that Keir Starmer made that said that we need to make Britain kind of, combat ready, if you like. We want to be on a war footing. A lot of people said, and I was one of them, well, it's all very well saying that, but we're not on a war footing, and we can't be on a war footing at the moment, it seems to me, for quite a long time, possibly 10 years or so into the future. People said it's a bit like saying in 1937, that guy Hitler's causing a bit of a problem, we'll see you in 10 years.
I think, the latest Strategic Defence Review, is extremely well written by Lord Robertson, General Barrons and Fiona Hill. It's very clear what it lays out. It defines what our current capabilities are, what the threats are, and what we need to do in the next 10 years. And great that the government has said it will. It has accepted the 62 recommendations.
Right.
But actually, are the resources going to be there to make this happen?
Yeah.
10 years? I don't think we've got 10 years. We're in the middle of a...
No, I don't think we have either.
Well, we're in the middle of a peer-on-peer war in Ukraine at the moment. Russia is very much being very aggressive. We know that. If there is a resolution there, will Russia, and this is a concern I think people are grappling with in NATO, is will they try and have a go at another state to really test the Article 5, and will NATO react?
Do you think they will try and test that?
I think they will. Whether that's, we've got to, I don't think they'll do it.
You've got to think that they might anyway, haven't you?
I think that's their intent.
Yeah.
We've come to whatever the resolution is going to be in Ukraine, and I don't think that's going to be for a while yet. It will take them not that long to regenerate, but they don't have to mass another great big army. They're already probing and testing through cyber, through disinformation and subversive activity, which is a big threat. So. Can we get on a war footing? That's what's been declared.
Right.
I think, the need is there, the threat is there, so something's got to be done, but there's got to be a very clear balance of how we commit our resources. And as a nation, we've got to make those tough decisions about whether we invest more in our social welfare, our NHS, or we do what every government needs to do, which is protect our society and our people against aggressive acts.
And do you think that the governments of the past were sort of lackadaisical in that arena, if you like? Because I remember having conversations about 3 or 4 years ago, before Ukraine happened, with sort of army types who were saying things like, well, the new fighting is going to be cyber. There's not really, you need people with boots on the ground. That's not going to happen anymore. And that was kind of where they were. About 3 or 4 years ago, they were thinking, it's all about technology. I remember the army put an ad out, I think, which looked like the Terminator, with sort of people walking around in sort of robo suits, and it was like this, and war has actually gone back to where it was, it seems to me, in Ukraine anyway, where it was sort of 50 years ago.
I think, it's great that the Defence Review talks about automation, about cyber, a lot more subsurface, protecting our critical national infrastructure, undersea cables and everything else. but boots on the ground still matter.
Yeah.
And an army.
That's how you win, isn't it?
That's how you win, and we're seeing that in Ukraine. You still need people, and it's a relatively small force compared to what the Russians are throwing them, but they are using technology to huge effect, and we saw that with that strategic raid, Spider's Web, the other day. Fantastic.
Amazing.
But that was enabled by technology. But you still need to have people, and an army.
But somebody had to drive the truck in, didn't they?
They've still got to make it happen.
Yeah.
So the man in the loop, the man, woman loop is still required, and you still need people to hold ground. We've got our overseas territories we need to protect. We've got our sea lanes we need to protect. So people matter, and having an army of what will be less than 70,000 is insufficient for future war. Technology in 10 years' time, robots you mentioned, may get us there that a 70,000 force may be enough, but it ain't enough at the moment.
And
so
the hardware, like submarines, which are going to cost years, take years to build, and ships and more tanks and more planes and all of that. I mean, that's going to take a while, isn't it?
It is, but I think this is where the Defence Review rightly talks about deterrence by denial. And deterrence, you've got to have the physical capability there, and that you're going to be prepared to use it. So the fact we are rearming, we are investing in those strategic assets is a very positive. But we still need the people to do it. And you've got to look after your people. You've got to back them, going back to the inquiries, saying we will look after you from cradle to grave. While you're serving, we'll ask you to do extraordinary things. And when you've left, we'll look after you as well. And that things like, our American brothers are much better than this, providing the servicemen and women and their families with medical cover, with dental cover. So look after these people, especially if we don't have very many of them.
Which is why you're able now to announce your appointment as the chairman of We Served. Hugh Andre, a good friend of ours here, comes on the station a lot. He set up this organisation, which is all about a kind of a catch-all, if you like, a sort of a blanket to wrap around people who come out of the armed services. Tell us why.
That's right. I'm delighted, and it's formal. I think you have the scoop.
Thank you.
In terms of my announcement of chair of We Served.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to provide here is a marketplace system for all our veterans and their families, and that's over 5 million in the UK, where they can have a one-stop shop where they can go to, join the community, rejoin the community which they had in the military, but more importantly have access to jobs, to training, to health services, to insurance, to financial service and everything else. So that's on the one side of the marketplace. On the other side, we're able to provide that population of up to 5 million veterans and their families with the opportunity to find accredited veterans who they can employ, and businesses recognise the skills and experiences which servicemen and women have when they leave the military. But also they've got access to a market, whether they want to sell them products, insurance, travel, holidays, rewards and discounts. But they can do that all at a discount because there's a large population there. So I think it's great what we're doing. And we're launching.
It's a fantastic organisation. It really is, and it's growing kind of almost as we speak, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's growing. We hope to launch. We're aiming to launch at the end of this month. We already have a considerable number of subscribers for it. It is a free to join service. And no one else is doing anything like it.
No, very good. And just finally, I mean, people think about the SAS as this very mythical kind of, slightly romantic unit that is filled with incredibly brave men and women. What's it like to be in the SAS? I mean, it's kind of a stupid question, but I think people would want to know what it's like to be in the SAS. Do you sort of stride the world like, I don't know, the Colossus?
No, not at all. I mean, obviously, it's a huge privilege. And it's full of very experienced, very talented individuals, so brilliant people to work with. Very, very strong sense of purpose and duty, very strong teamwork, and no, we don't like walking around the world like Colossus. You say it's much more discreet and subtle than that. We want to be able to operate discreetly, effectively, and do what our government asks us to do, which other members of the military are not able to do. And that's a really privileged position to be in.
Yeah, incredible. Well, listen, really good to see you. Thank you, Brigadier Ed Butler, for coming in. Good luck with We Served.
Great, thanks
so much. See you
much.
again soon. Thank you very much indeed. This is Morning Glory. Back after this.
I actually think the burqa should be banned. I think it is reprehensible in this country. I think anything that actually blocks communication is a barrier to communication and integration. I know this only too well, but living in East London as well, which is we've got silos of people who don't integrate. That is not how you build a great country. Now, that goes further. Nigel talked about this, about facial coverings, about crash helmets, for example, in public places. This is about law and order and safety. And also, it's about having shared British values. And we need to make sure we do have that to build Britain back to being great.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:53. I'm Mike Graham, and of course, this is the home of common sense. Got so many messages to get to. We'll try and get them out to you very, very soon. A bit of breaking news to you. Elon Musk has said that he regrets some of his posts about Donald Trump, saying they went too far. Certainly, we know that he's deleted quite a few of them, including the one that was a reference to the Jeffrey Epstein book, which is now gone completely, disappeared into the ether. Let's get a quick voice note from Raman.
Good morning, Mike. Another lovely Wednesday. And another Wednesday afternoon edition due of 8 p.m. NAQs. Prime Minister not answering questions. Have a good day.
Very good. It just sounds a bit long, but I take your point. Absolutely good. Great stuff, Raman. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we've got loads more to do in the final hour of the show, but we'll take more of your calls as well. 0344 499 1000. We said there was an AI summit today. Donna in Birmingham says there's an AI summit every week. It's called a cabinet meeting. And of course, at the cabinet meeting, what they do is they discuss our broken borders. Because there's nothing worse, is there, than the broken borders of this country. Pages 8 and 9 of The Sun today. Thea Jacobs is going to talk to us right here. Jack Elsom and Ryan Saby have written about £680 million more to protect our borders. But really, that's a drop in the ocean, if you'll pardon the expression. Thea, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks very much for joining us. I mean, in the scheme of things, there's an awful lot of money being spent, billions and billions of pounds on migrant hotels and all the rest of it. £4 million every day, I think it costs housing these people. But considering how much money's been given to the NHS and how much money's going into the housing budget, £680 million more doesn't seem like very much, really, does it?
I mean, it's not a huge amount because it's an ongoing issue. The people that are coming across our borders, in most cases, are desperate.
Yeah.
In other cases, they're possibly criminals, so they're going to keep coming.
Trouble is, we don't know the difference. I mean, that is the major problem, isn't it? Because an awful lot of the people that do come in just sort of disappear into the system, and nobody really ever finds out who they are, because if they don't have any identification, they don't have any documents, they could say they come from a particular country. People don't really know.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. And the other issue is that if you come into the UK's borders illegally, you are probably going to be pulled into what police call the grey economy. Yeah. So that is sort of illegal work where you are exploited, you're paid very low. So even if you come here looking to get away from a horrible situation, you can get pulled into criminality because you can't work here legally and your options are very limited.
Right, exactly right. According to the piece that's in there today, Rachel Reeves and Yvette Cooper have written a little thing saying, we inherited a broken immigration system under the Conservative smuggling gangs took hold, undermining Britain's border security and putting lives at risk. They say their spending review is about protecting security and strengthening the borders. But, I mean, they've been in now for nearly a year, and if anything, it's got worse, hasn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it has, but then some of that could be because we're more aware of it. I know from speaking with Greater Manchester Police that police forces are now starting to play a much bigger role. They're getting involved in trying to help with the immigration issues.
Right. But I mean, there are more people having come here illegally this year than there have been in previous years. So, I mean, that part of it is absolutely right. 15,000 people have crossed the channel in small boats so far this year.
Yeah, it is. And if you think about it, there's a lot of countries that are having, difficult situations. We've got war, we've got famine, and obviously the more places that are going through difficulties, the more people are going to be fleeing and trying
they
to...
are mostly coming from France, though, of course, aren't they?
Well, that's where you first get to, right? Because once you're in Europe, you can get into sort of like the Schengen area, and then Britain is, seen as somewhere that's a safe place to live. So people are trying to get across from...
But that is the problem. I mean, nobody seems to know how to stop it from happening. I mean, we've given the French a load of money. That hasn't made any difference. We tried giving the French some police help. That didn't make any difference. I think we put Navy ships in the Channel last year or the year before. That didn't make any difference. I mean, it's almost an intractable problem now.
It is, and I think, we sort of go in phases where certain types of coming into the country become very prominent. So, for example, we had people coming in the back of lorries, lots of money went into that, they managed to clamp down on it, we've got small boats, and we now know that there are people coming in on fake documents through the airports. With varying success rates. Some people are obviously getting through, other people are getting stopped, which is how the police now know about it.
Yeah. The problem is that it's just too nice to be here. That's why people keep coming. But Thea, listen, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Thea Jacobs, feature writer at The Sun there, looking at their Broken Borders special today on pages 8 and 9. Lots more of you have got things to say. Derek in South Wales says, morning, Mike, great show. The military should be back to the hilt all the way. This is off the back of our interview with the SAS commander, former SAS commander. They shouldn't be hounded and prosecuted for doing their service, working for the nation in our interest and security. That's their job, and a big thanks to them and the veterans. Do you think this would happen with Trump? Well, of course it wouldn't happen with Trump. And Jeff in Aberdeenshire talking about phones and taking them off children. Comparing phones to alcohol is ridiculous. Typical teacher. Well, I tell you what, Catherine Burble-Singh is not a typical teacher. I agree that kids have too much screen time, but if they put the phone down, they pick up the Xbox. Don't really see how this can be done, says Jeff in Aberdeenshire. Well, I mean, I think, like everything, you stop the boats by making it less likely that you will have a good time when you come to Britain. That's when people stop doing it. If you make it impossible for children to access social media, that's really what they're talking about, then that can be done, I'm sure. Mike, all credit to you for getting Ed Butler on. Here's the thing. How many more of our servicemen and women would have died if the likes of our special forces had not taken out many of those who they did? Keep up the great work, says Steve. Thank you very much indeed. Jason says, I'm an ex-serviceman myself. I advise anyone I talk to in the services or any potential recruit, get out or avoid. They do not have your back. Well, I mean, maybe that can change. That would be good. We serve certainly an organisation that should be able to help people and is helping people even as we speak. Coming up in the next hour, Richard Fuller joins us. William Clouston from the SDP. This is Talk. We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says, in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day, they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway. How
about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in the pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed. Very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. And they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Yeah, moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it a channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It is, of course, the home of common sense, the one place where you get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. 3 minutes past 9. Richard Fuller is on the show coming up very shortly. He's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. I'm sure he'll have some interesting things to say about Rachel Reeves and her spending review. I've already reviewed her spending review, and I can tell you it gets a zilch out of 10. She doesn't get 1 star, she doesn't get 2 stars, she doesn't get 3 stars, she gets no stars. Nil point for Rachel Reeves' review, because it's a load of old cobblers. Quite frankly, it's ridiculous. I've already got the lie of the day from Keir Starmer. He put this out literally an hour ago. My government was elected on a mandate for change. Our first job was to stabilise the economy and public finances. Yeah, well, you haven't done that. He then says, now we move on to a new chapter to deliver on our promise for change. Deliver on our promise for change. We're investing in Britain's renewal so you and your family are better off. It's so ridiculously lame and wrong and just a lie. He's not making anybody better off. Everybody's worse off. People are losing their jobs. People are losing their livelihoods. People are losing their businesses. People are losing their homes. People are losing faith in this government because it's so rotten to the core. And they're lying to us every single day. And they know they're lying. We know they're lying. Everybody does. William Clouston's here. We're going to talk about that as well. Angela Rayner says she's going to spend 39 billion on some housing that she's going to put out. Or is it 29 billion? I can't remember. She's basically giving money to corporations which are commercial corporations which should be building the houses anyway. And given what's being said in the Telegraph this morning about how many foreign-born people are living in London at a cost of 3.6 billion to the rest of us, who's going to get this housing? Exactly where is it going to go? Where is it going to be built? All of those questions are yet to be answered. And by the way, it's 29 billion over 10 years. So it's only 2.9 billion a year anyway. 30 billion is going into the NHS. Even the NHS is saying that's not going to do any good. What's happening? What's going on? It's 4 minutes past 9. Let us get it on. Oh, we've got some more breaking news for you. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has flown to Gibraltar ahead of a potential post-Brexit deal with Spain. Well, Gibraltar isn't Spain. Why is he going to Gibraltar if he's doing a deal with Spain? Or is he going to give Gibraltar away to Spain? Oh. Crikey. William, very good morning to you.
Morning.
We'll come back to you in a second. Lots to talk about this morning. Elon Musk has also already said he regrets some of his posts about President Donald Trump last week. He says they went too far. Yeah, well, we all could see that. Lots more to do. Let's go down to Westminster right now. Richard Fuller, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, is with us. Richard, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thanks very much for joining us. Well, this is the day, isn't it? The spending review. I've already given it nil point for Rachel Reeves because, one, she doesn't really have any money. What money she does have, she's either borrowed or nicked from the taxpayer. So what's it all about? All of this money that she's spreading around. Housing gets 29 billion, NHS gets 30 billion, Defence presumably gets some as well. Is it going to make any difference?
Yeah. I don't think people are going to feel it, are they? Are they going to wonder about what the day-to-day impact is going to be on their lives? And a lot of what the Chancellor's announcing today won't have an effect for 5 or 10 years. Doesn't mean it's wrong. But it's not going to have a real effect on some of the real difficulties people have right now in getting by. And remember, Mike, the thing with this Chancellor is she's lost control of the public finances. We know that. We know that she made a forecast in March about where borrowing was. Literally just a month later, she was already £14 billion behind. And then she made the disastrous decision last year about winter fuel payments. Now she's reversed it. That doesn't look good. and she's not worked out how she's going to pay for it. So today, while she's saying all this good news about how she's spending money here and spending money there, families will be wondering, well, what's this going to mean for me later in the year? Is she going to come back and ask me for more taxes?
Yeah. I mean, Keir Starmer has put out a tweet this morning, believe it or not, Richard, who says, our first job was to stabilise the economy and public finances. Now we move into a new chapter to deliver on our promise for change. What does he mean?
Well, well, no, maybe he thinks he controls the world, you know. I mean, maybe he thinks that the world moves and bends to his instruction. But you and I know, your listeners know, that the people who make this economy grow are the people who get up every morning and go to work and work hard, people who start a business. Maybe they are, you know, they run their own business, maybe they're a freelancer, maybe they work for a small business, and they know that they can't deal with the punishing taxes that this government's put in place last year, the biggest in a generation, and the prospect that as the Chancellor dances around today talking about some important things, of course, that she's going to come back for more taxes in the autumn. And even the Institute for Fiscal Studies say that it's more than a 50-50 chance she's going to do that. I mean, I think the Prime Minister needs to have a dose of reality about his own powers. If you take even the waste of money that he's put for this Chagos deal, that was supposed to placate the UN, and now the UN are kicking off again. So he's not a good negotiator. He isn't good at setting the tone for the country, and he certainly isn't the person you can trust to look after the public finances.
And let me ask you about this housing money. What do you think they're going to spend that on? And given the story in the Telegraph this morning that basically £3.6 billion is spent every year in London to house people who have been born outside of Britain, 48% of houses occupied by foreign-born heads of the household, from 2021 census figures these are, so I imagine that's bigger. I mean, it looks to me as though an awful lot of this affordable housing that's being built by Angela Rayner will go to immigrants.
Well, look, you're putting your finger on another risk. I often talk about an aspect. It's not just about how much money you spend, it's about how effectively you spend it. Are you being efficient with taxpayers' money? And that's a sort of a bit of an accountancy type of look at things. But the other aspect is it actually really having an impact on the people of this country? And this is the area where you put your finger on something. If you're going to spend so much money on providing housing for people in this country, for the people in this country to feel that impact, you've also got to say you're taking action to control migration. And there's no sign from this government that they've got a grip on migration either.
No, they absolutely don't. Richard, thank you very much indeed. Richard Fuller, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. There are some people who are better off, thanks to Keir Starmer. Unfortunately, they're all in Mauritius, because it turns out this morning that, according to a piece in the Telegraph, 81% of people who work in Mauritius have just been told they won't be paying any income tax at all. No income tax. Why? Because of the Chagos Islands deal, which has gifted 30 billion quid to the Mauritius government. Amazing. William Clouston's here. Very good morning to you, William.
Morning.
Good day to be a Mauritian, isn't it?
Very
Not
good.
such a good day to be British.
Yeah, British expense. Yeah, it's astonishing.
Yeah. So we're now subsidising other people's tax regimes.
Yeah, we've asked in the SDP. We've asked for an inquiry into this. There's something very strange about this deal.
There really is.
So bad and so not in our interest. It's not in British interests at all. And for it to just come out like that and be sort of, you know, agreed under the auspices of international law, which wasn't there. Dreadful, yeah. And stories like this will continue to come out. And we've got 99 years of this, theoretically. Every single year we're paying parts of their bill. And so, yeah, if you're a Mauritian citizen, you're jumping for joy.
Yeah, street parties all round, I would imagine.
Fantastic.
And what about David Lammy now, off to Gibraltar? This has got a bit of a sniff about it as well, isn't it?
Well, would any sensible person trust Lammy or Starmer on the Falklands or any overseas asset whatsoever, on Gibraltar or anything, given their record? Given the fact they've both given speeches basically decrying colonialism and wanting for reparations, I think they think this is a form of reparation, a form of atonement. Yeah. We've done badly, let's make it up, you can have everything, it's total surrender.
Do you know what they're like? They're like the worst football manager. You know, when people say when you're the manager of a football team, you have to be careful that you don't change the club because you're only really a part-time caretaker of the property, which is the club. The property, which is Great Britain, is being sold down the river by this lot.
But I would like, and most British citizens would like, a leader and a foreign secretary that actually liked the club.
Yeah.
Actually
that
liked
would be nice.
the country.
Yeah.
Actually fought for it a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually you know,
stood up for it.
Stood up for it, yeah.
Instead of which we're giving ourselves no room to manoeuvre with France and with the European Union. We're saying take as many fish out of the sea as you like. We'll take all the migrants. You know, we'll give you a load of money, but we won't get anything in return.
It's like a form of state capture.
Yeah.
It's like I don't say that lightly. It's like if you've got people running you that don't have your best interests at heart.
Yeah.
And would prefer foreign, you know, entities of various councils and institutions to take control, then you're in real trouble.
Yeah.
Have you heard that, you know, there's a man called David Betts at King's College who's done a bit of research on the potential for civil war.
Yeah.
And he's actually predicted that this is quite a reasonable likelihood in Britain.
I mean, people say to me every day that, you know, we have to rise up and fight this. And, I mean, I worry that actually that will happen.
I worry that...
You don't want a civil war.
But it's basic. No, it's horrifying. I mean, but it's basics. You know, he just rationally looks at it. If you lose control of your border, if you have unvetted people coming in every day, it breaks the social contract.
Particularly if they commit crime.
Yeah, yeah. But it's the contract. The social contract's gone. You look after me. Government's first priority is to look after its safety of its citizens, protect them, and it's not doing it. So, and it's weird. I mean, it's interesting. Your previous interview there, Richard Fuller said that, you know, does Starmer thinks he can control the world? I honestly think some of you know, they've got no commercial experience.
No.
But there's about 3 people in the cabinet have some, but it's not very impressive.
But the thing I find astonishing is that even before I did what I do, and even before I started kind of, you know, working properly, when I was a teenager, and even when I was at college and university, I had a job. I worked. You can see how business worked. I worked in some very, you know, manual jobs, you know, working behind a bar, working in a bakery, all that kind of thing. You see how the business works. How have they not even done that? They don't even seem to have a grasp of actual figures.
The root is activism and NGOs and charities, in particular the Labour Party charities and SW1 think tanks, and then they get into politics from there, and too few of them have got any real experience. But the commercial experience thing is really important, because what's happening now is that they've made the massive tax grab, and sure as eggs are eggs, you know, it's crushed the economy. They're actually crushing the private sector right now. The tax base is being destroyed. PMI index is below 50 now, so you know, we're in a contraction. Unemployment is up. All the metrics are going wrong.
Over 100,000 people in May alone left the PAYE system, which means that, you know, that will happen now on an ever-increasing basis, I would imagine, for the rest of the year, which means probably by the end of the year you could have 500,000 more people unemployed.
Exactly, 109,000 in May alone. It's shocking. But this is the root of it is that they don't understand. They're basic. They think they can grab the tax and nothing else will happen. But what it does is it puts, you know, businesses in the pubs and the drinks industry and the, you know, hospitality just on the brink. A lot of them not making money. So it's their inexperience and inaptitude for it.
And the housing business has been really badly hit.
Can I look at that?
Yeah, let's talk about that, because this morning I was having a conversation with somebody who lives in London, was thinking about moving house, but has said that the stamp duty cost now is so prohibitive that they're just not going to do it. Then looks at possibly putting on some kind of extension on the house, prodigiously expensive again. So he's not doing either of those things. So there's no money going into that system, right? The housing market's slowing down massively. People are not moving.
Now we can see this, so that the volumes go and the flow goes, and then it gets clogged because people can't downsize and free up capital for other things. I just want to just help the viewers and listeners on this announcement. Because honestly, Mike, it's like sort of Soviet times. They're saying things that are just not true. So they announce the 40 billion for housing. No, it's about 39, and that's without indexation over 10 years. The actual figures are they spend about 2.5 billion on social housing a year. That's going to be increased by about 200 million. A tiny increase.
So a really small increase.
A very small increase. And I'm in favour of building social housing. That's fine, but it's puny, absolutely puny. The total housing budget now that they've got for social housing could house about 30,000 people. Repeat, 30,000 people on a year on this.
Which is not enough.
No, but the net migration. So just net migration is nearly 450,000.
And that's lower than it's been. By the way.
So they're insulting us by saying, "Oh, this is a massive." They said it was the biggest social housing expansion in 30 years. Well, I tell you what, Mike, listeners, listen to this. It's going to provide enough housing for 25 days of migration. It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing.
That's
but
pathetic, isn't it?
They think they can gaslight the public. They think they can say, get these big figures and announce them. And Labour cannot announce a figure that is in per year. They cannot do it.
40 billion over 10 years. They won't even be in government in 5 years' time.
No, of course they won't.
So I'm just fed up with
this. This is why we were talking about defence review earlier with the former brigadier of the SAS.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, you know, they're talking about being on a war footing, for example, building nuclear submarines. You know, but then they couldn't actually tell us when they got right down to it how many nuclear submarines, because apparently they've already got 6, and they said we're going to have up to 12.
Yes.
And up to 12 could be none.
Up to 12 could be 1.
Could be 1,
Yes,
could be 2. And it'll be 10 years before we see the fruits of it anyway. So what war footing are we on? We're not on one. Same with the housing announcements. Every announcement they make is basically a lie, isn't it?
It's gaslighting the public.
And if you were to be honest, I would ask you the question: who's going to get these housing, the extra houses?
Yeah.
Probably an awful lot of people coming here from overseas.
Well, that's true, because this is a downstream of both Labour and Conservative governments for 30 years have been very keen on low-skilled migration. But low-skilled migration is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
Because if you look at whether those groups are net fiscally positive, i.e. they contribute, or they're negative, many of them are massively negative. Some of the stats, the Europeans have better stats on this, actually. The OBR is just catching up and we're getting something from them. But in Denmark and Holland, it's calculated that some migrant categories are costing £500,000 per person over their lifetime.
Yeah.
That is
colossally... We've got figures that I've seen which say at least 150,000 per migrant who works in a low, as you say, a low wage economy.
And then this point about the London housing stock, which is, you know, I think just under half. It's something like 48%.
Yeah, but that's the figure from 2021 from the census. So you can guarantee that's over half now.
It could be, and then if you drill down into the figures, quite a lot of those households have very, very high levels of worklessness.
Yeah.
And welfare dependency. So no, it's crazy. I mean, we need to get sensible, Mike. Good governance should be the main thing we're looking for.
Absolutely. But you see what's happening in Northern Ireland at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, and there's lots of different reasons for why the people are unhappy. But ostensibly it's over in a particular incident like Southport, where a sexual assault has been committed, or at least has been alleged to have been committed by 2 young teenage boys who would appear to be Romanian.
Yes.
And you know, they've been charged, I think, and they're going to have a trial. But people are angry because, you know, Northern Ireland, I know it quite well. I don't know how well you know it, but it's a relatively tight-knit community.
I've got friends there.
It's a relatively tight-knit community.
Yeah.
You suddenly put a load of people in from somewhere else, and those people suddenly misbehave or start, you know, committing crime.
This is why people have got
It's a tinderbox.
It is, but this is a boiling point. But this is why the government have to step up and actually take some control over the borders and get real. Because if this continues, it's all to do with people feeling powerless, basically. If their communities, without any democratic consent, change demographically massively without their consent, and then crime happens and assaults of this kind happen, people feel... Actually, the crisis for government is legitimacy. People think, well, who's going to help us?
Right.
And in Northern Ireland...
it's the government's fault, basically.
Yeah, it's the government's fault, because they don't listen.
They've created the problem.
And there's no sign, unfortunately, Mike, with this government, I can see no sign of it getting better, even better.
No, absolutely not. Final question for you, which is not related to politics, really, although Heidi Alexander is putting it forward as an idea. Driverless cars in London by next year.
Yeah.
I'm not getting in one. I don't know about you. I don't like the idea. I don't trust them.
No.
You know, I don't fancy it.
No, well, on this, I would say I believe it when I see it. I mean, you're taking agency, aren't you?
Yes.
Mind you, having said that, some of the big cities in Britain, you look at the quality of driving and you think, you know, some of it's not too good. But yeah, honestly, I believe it when I see it. I think it takes agency away. What they're trying to do, Mike, is to have driverless cars that end up being like buses.
Yeah.
Paris is very keen on this. The Parisian city government is very keen on people getting rid of their cars and having transport pods that move around. But I think that's bad. I'm old enough to... People loved their cars.
I love my
when
car.
cars were
take it
were
from
different
my cold,
shapes.
dead hand, I'm afraid.
Exactly,
you know.
No, I love mine, so no, it's not happening, I'm afraid. Mine's a diesel, I have to say.
Yeah, mine isn't a diesel, but the one before was, and the one before that was, because, of course, Ed Miliband said diesel was better.
I need the range to go up to Orkney.
Yeah, you can't have an electric car.
No.
It's useless, absolutely pointless. William, thank you very much indeed. William Fleuston. It's 21 minutes past 9. How about this from Joanna in Salisbury? Mike, loved your item on ex-servicemen. What isn't being said is our poor military serving in battle situations being chased some 20 years plus later after events for doing what they were ordered to do top down. absolutely. Dean from Dagenham says, is it true that Lammy's in Gibraltar today? That'll be the next thing we'll all be paying to give to Spain. Yeah, it's another 30 billion down the drain. Hasta la vista. There we are, Gibraltar, 9 more, 9 danker. 21 minutes past 9.
So on the one hand, we keep hiking up energy prices with this religion of net zero, this lunatic end of times religion, which says that unless we cut carbon by a certain amount in 10 years, we're all going to fry in an apocalypse. Completely untrue. So they've devoted themselves to this cult, which has the effect of raising those prices. And then they have to bring in this allowance to help older people pay for the basics of life. Yeah. And then they take that allowance away. I mean, as you said earlier on, this is down to the Tories as well as Labour, but we are ruled by dumb people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:24. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, the witching hour of 10 o'clock, in which case you've got Julie Hartley-Brewer for the next 3 hours. Mike, my kids became violent when the phone was removed by us or the school. Kids are addicted to phones. Schools ban them, but some classes want them to use them in classroom to do research. And Amanda says, on the subject of children and phones, my 11-year-old granddaughter has a brick phone she carries with her purely for staying in touch with her parents when she's on her own. Should be the same for all children. Well, a lot of people say that. A lot of people say that. Teresa says, Mike, driverless cars on smart motorways, yet another recipe for disaster. It is really, isn't it? You know something is going to go horribly wrong. Let's get a voice note from Richard on the housing front.
Morning, Mike. The new planning laws, are they actually who they're to benefit? I think they're to benefit the builders, really. We're going to see widespread greenbelt development while brownfields stay empty and they're tired looking. It's clearly not a shortage of houses. In Macclesfield, there's loads of new builds. Can't sell them. So it's weird, really, isn't it? It's obviously the only people that are going to benefit are the big boy builders and their shareholders.
Yeah, I think, Richard, you're absolutely right from Macclesfield, because I've seen certainly some new build sort of estates going up in various parts of the country, and people tell me that, you know, they have a big chunk of those estates put aside for social housing, which of course will mean that the people who are asked to spend an awful lot of money on the non-social housing, if you like, the most expensive ones, are going to have to go, well, what's going on down there? Oh, that's where the social housing bit is. Well, you know, is that going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Is it going to be indifferent? Who knows? Let's talk to Lance Foreman, owner of Foreman's Smoked Salmon, of course. Foreman and Field, it used to be. Lance, very good morning.
Good morning to you, Mike. I heard you just talking about driverless cars. I think we might do better with the driverless government at the moment, because the drivers we've got at the moment are just, you know, they crash things one minute, they keep taking wrong turnings and having to do U-turns. It's hopeless.
Absolutely, but the trouble is they don't get fined for doing it like the rest of us do, and they're probably more rudderless than driverless actually as well. But let's talk about one of their latest ruses, which is Angela Rayner's pet project, which of course is the new workers' rights laws that are going to be coming in. You run a business which employs an awful lot of people. Presumably you're already paying the price of the national insurance hike and the minimum wage hike and whatever else. So what does this workers' rights bill do for people like you?
Well, it's an absolute disaster, particularly for small businesses, which account for the vast majority. You know, over 90% of businesses in the UK are small businesses. Right. I think something like 85% are family businesses. And this is a disaster because basically what it means is that unions will have the right to literally enter your business. And, you know, if you employ 5 people, if they can persuade one of them to join the union, they're in. Yeah. They can then start dictating, you know, how your business runs. And it's, you know, we employ 50 people, Mike. So we're not a big employer. We're a small employer. But on average, my staff have been with me for 14 years. Right. Good businesses have good employment practices. A business needs its employees to be happy for it to be successful. And to have unions just coming in, interfering, stirring up trouble, it is just not the way. You know, this is a sort of Victorian approach to business, that the employer's bad and employees are good. That's not how we do things in the 21st century. And it's very clear to me why they're doing this. This is about unions trying to recruit new members so they, you know, get more fee, you know, more union dues and memberships. So that unions essentially build up and they, you know, provide a bigger support to the Labour Party. This will not help the economy grow. This will actually put people off wanting to employ, you know, entrepreneurs off wanting to employ people and start businesses. It's a disaster.
No, exactly right. Well, it's like William Clouston was saying, you know, the problem with this government is that they have no commercial experience whatsoever, which I find incredibly hard to believe that not one of them has even had a job working behind a bar or doing something which you would think would give them an idea of what a small business being run is like. But also, they've got this kind of class bias, haven't they? They've got this hatred of people who run businesses. Like you say, you know, they immediately assume if you own a business, you must be some kind of, you know, right-wing maniac who's a bigot and wants to exploit his workers, you know, and make them all sort of work on slave labour. It's okay for Ed Miliband to buy, you know, solar-powered panels from China made by slaves. That's fine, but they just assume that you're a bad guy, and they assume that everybody who's a worker is a good guy. And it's like this class war that they're waging in the NHS, where we saw that story at the weekend of a private school educated boy not seen by the NHS because he went to private school. The same way they're coming after anybody with any money at all and just taxing them, you know, to the nth degree.
Yeah, well, and also the thing is they completely misunderstand the difference between small businesses and big businesses. Yeah. You know, the balance of power between the employer and the employee is completely and utterly different. You know, if I employ somebody and they decide, you know, they don't fancy working for me anymore and they want to get a different job somewhere else, they can just hand in their notice and leave. Yeah. On the other hand, if I don't think they're doing a terribly good job, I can't sack them. Right. I can't remove them. So, you know, the balance of power is totally wrong. And if Angela Rayner really does want to go ahead with this absolutely idiotic bill, what she should do is make an exemption for small and medium-sized businesses, because, you know, they're not the same as sort of multinationals that employ thousands of people, where perhaps you might want a representative, you know, speaking on behalf of the employees. Right. But they're two very, very different animals.
Well, of course they are. I mean, you probably know pretty much all of your employees personally, right? You probably interact with most of them personally on any given day. You know, I've worked in small businesses as well, and that's the way they get by. You know, because if suddenly somebody goes, well, I think you're working people too hard. You know, I think we should cut the working day down, you know, to 6 hours, and I think there should be a break, you know, at 10:30 in the morning and another break at 2:30. You know, it starts to get ridiculous, doesn't it?
Yeah, they do. I mean, my staff often say to me that when they arrive at work, they don't feel like they're coming to work. They feel like they're they're joining their family again.
Right.
We feel, we genuinely feel like a family business, and my staff are fantastic. I totally depend on them, and without them, I wouldn't have a strong business.
Right.
So I make sure I look after them, and they look after the business. It's this is what business in the 21st century is about.
Yeah.
Labour just don't understand it, and as you very rightly make the point, none of them have ever been in a business, a small business. They've never started a business, and they really don't have a clue. And it's small businesses and family businesses that are the absolute drivers of this economy.
Yeah.
And Rachel Reeves is doing nothing to help. The national insurance hike was a disaster. This is a catastrophe. And in fact, Mike, the really interesting thing is that the number one reason that family businesses decide to pack it all up and just give up is not because they can't make a profit. It's because they just get fed up with all the red tape, and they come into work one day and say, you know what, I just don't need all this hassle anymore. And I'm sort of getting to that point myself. I sort of just think, why am I having to constantly battle against all these regulations day after day? Do I really need this? Who am I doing it for? And that's the sort of feeling that entrepreneurs in Britain are having today, and that's why many are leaving the country.
Yeah, I mean, hospitality in particular, I speak to people all the time, who've got, a restaurant business where they might have had 3 restaurants a while ago, now they've only got 1. They've had to get rid of people, they can't hire as many people to work there because of national insurance, pubs and venues where events are going on, they're all struggling. And this government is doing nothing but hammer them sort of every single day. And as you say, I talk to a lot of people who just go, I just don't know how much longer I can carry on.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely right. You say the government just really don't have a clue. This is, they should be welcoming entrepreneurship. They should be doing everything they can to stimulate growth, and having unions being able to just enter a business and force a business to be able to, allow its employees to sort of start, having their rights stirred up by a union that's only really interested in their own membership and, membership dues. This really is not the way forward for Britain in the 21st century. It's, Labour, well, I say they need to think again, but they're so useless. I don't think they have the ability to think at all.
I don't think so either. Yeah, I mean, Sacha Lord, who you'll know from the nighttime economy up in Manchester, in the last 12 months, hospitality has seen more job losses than any other sector. The UK's 5th biggest industry is crumbling away, and yet we are still being ignored because the government doesn't care.
Yeah. They don't care. They don't understand. It's not even a question of caring. They don't understand. First of all, we had, a few years ago, the energy price hikes, massive hikes for, so any hospitality business that operates, well, of course, we all use electricity, fridges and ovens and so on. That's going to have hurt them really badly. That's all down to Ed Miliband's net zero nonsense.
Yeah.
Then we've had the national insurance hike, and national insurance isn't just about your own wages going up, but every single one of your suppliers will have put their prices up to cover their wage increase. So you've actually had a double whammy of cost increases. And businesses just can't afford to absorb these all the time without going bust. They have to pass them on to the consumer. So you get inflation coming through. And we've seen massive, food inflation, in the hospitality and food industry. I'd say this is not the way to grow an economy. The way to grow an economy is to reduce red tape, to reduce taxes, to stimulate the economy so that people want to do business here.
Yeah.
And Rachel Reeves really needs to think again. And Angela Rayner on this stuff, she's living in a different century.
Yeah, absolutely dreadful. Absolutely awful, both of them. Thank you, Lance. Good to talk to you. Good luck with it all. Thanks very much indeed. Lance Foreman, brilliant business that he runs, by the way, so let's hope he keeps it going. But they're not making it easy. Tony from Sussex says, Rachel Reeves has wrecked our economy. From a promising position last year, we were the biggest growing economy in the G7. Now look at us. Inflation up, unemployment up, crime up, and the working people in despair. Apart from that, everything's fine. Keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, I'll try, Tony. Steve is in Bury. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing, sir?
Well, not too bad.
Okay.
A bit more work.
Tell us what you want to tell us.
Well, I'm a plumber, Mike, in Bury, Greater Manchester. And I just started to, I've got a combination of like domestic customers, houses, but I also do a lot of plumbing for small businesses. And the small businesses were telling me they're absolutely on the knees. On the domestic front, a lot of people don't want to spend on big ticket things like bathrooms and things like that, just doing the essentials. But I did some stats, Mike, from the election 2024 to now, and I'm 33% down in takings.
Really?
Yeah, I did July 23 to July 24, the end of the Tory government, and I did the Labour government, and I'm 33% down.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, and they always say you can't get a plumber and all this. And my point is, what I'm just noticing, nobody's spending, Mike. The economy, it's absolute. I mean, I don't know what it's like down south, but up here, up the north, there's a lot of people, and it's just really bad. I have a few mates in the building game.
Yeah.
Craig, the carpet fitter's dried up. Matt, the window fitter's dried up.
Yeah.
Another Mike, a plumber in Bury, he's no bathrooms on. So, I mean, these are guys who normally you can't get for sort of 3 to 6 months.
Sure. This is people. I mean, I'm hearing from people all the time. They just say we were going to do this, but then we're not sure about what the future holds. So we're going to hold off. We're not going to put the new kitchen in. We're not going to do the extension. We're not going to get the conservatory. All the things that people were doing back in, even during COVID times, because they had more sort of disposable income, I suppose. They're just not spending money, are they?
Yeah, and I'll tell you about it, Mike. It reminds me of 2008 because I'm starting getting flyers through the flat door. Yeah. From pubs.
Right.
Well, we all know the pubs are there because the great big buildings that are stood there, and you're getting pubs advertising. And I just think it's very, very akin to 2008.
Yeah, you might well be right. It's worrying, very worrying. Well, listen, Steve, thanks very much indeed. Appreciate your call. Stephen Berry there, he's a plumber. Takings are down a third, 33% from last year because of this useless Labour government. Steve from Leicester says, why do all the Labour Party sound like they all have sinus problems? And Rob says, morning, Mike, 10,000 jobs at the new power station. Is there 10,000 people in the Dole office who are qualified brickies, electricians, steel erectors looking for work? No, these people won't be able to move to the new power station, so they're not new jobs. Exactly right. And Stuart says, Reeves better not increase taxes today after claiming she's fixed the foundations as the reason for the winter fuel U-turn. Well, we were saying the other day that she's kind of kiboshed herself there, because if she now is claiming that the economy's been fixed, she can't then come after us for more money, can she? Keith in Osmond Street says, I lived in Dubai for 40 years, and the reason they do so well is they are not a socialist state. There are only benefits for the locals, who are only 15% of the population. They also don't accept migrants, and if you break into the country, you go to jail. Not a hotel. Exactly right. Let's get a voice note from Steve.
Hello, Mike. Steve in Liverpool. Great show as ever. Two things for you. Next time you have an MP on that says what people are telling us on the doors, ask them when they were last on the doors. I don't remember ever seeing an MP on the doors. And trust me, if they were going knocking on doors, they'd have a camera crew with them filming it. Just ask them, when were you last knocking on someone's door? And fact check it. Another thing, let's call PMQs PMAs. Prime Minister's answers.
Yes, Prime Minister's answers, except there aren't any. That's the trouble. There's plenty of questions, but there aren't any answers. That's coming up at midday, of course, right here on Talk. I'm a 74-year-old British pensioner on a state pension, and both my wife and I are so scared for our future, says David. Neil says, in Salisbury, the career politician has come home to roost and should be stopped. And Clive in Arundel, which could be the one could be the message of the day. Will the first driverless car be the Kia Starmer? Directionless, but brilliant at U-turns. Very good. Coming up, Rakib Hassan on Sadiq Khan getting knighted.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the home of common sense. It's the Morning Glory, 9:41. Of course, we're here until 10 o'clock. Elon Musk breaking news this morning. I regret some of my posts about President Trump last week. They went too far, says he. Everybody knew that he would probably relent from that ridiculous row that he was having with Donald Trump. And Trump, of course, like everybody else who is like him, will forgive him and take him back whenever he wants. Meanwhile, other breaking news this morning, David Lammy's gone to Gibraltar ahead of a potential post-Brexit deal with Spain. What do you mean post-Brexit deal? We left the European Union in 2016. It's 9 years ago. You know, we effectively left it properly in 2020. That's 5 years ago. So what's the deal? Hopefully he's not giving Gibraltar away. Crikey. Let's talk to Rakib Hassan, political commentator. He wrote a piece this week about Sadiq Khan, who was knighted yesterday by King Charles. And apparently, according to Sadiq Khan, and I refuse to call him Sir Sadiq Khan, by the way, according to Sadiq Khan, King Charles said to him, I'm sorry it's taken us so long to do this. For heaven's sake. He obviously doesn't drive around London very much. Rakib, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Long time no speak.
Yeah, I know. How you doing? Good to see you. I'm sorry, but I can't say anything good about Sadiq Khan. I've got nothing good to say, so I'm just going to let you talk and see what you make of it all.
Well, I authored a piece yesterday for the Telegraph on Sadiq Khan's knighthood, and I think what it really shows is that we don't have a New Year's honours of integrity, right. And I think that there's so many eyebrow raising choices for these honours, and I think that many people will find this knighthood of Sadiq Khan thoroughly unpalatable, especially Londoners who are only too familiar with the wave of youth knife crime, especially in areas which are suffering from a fatherlessness epidemic, which is being exploited by predatory, violent gangs. I can't say that the quality of public transportation in London is especially high. Right. And I think that you just see that there's just so many parts of London where there's this rampant shoplifting, which is affecting high streets. So the question is, you know, in terms of deserving a knighthood, is that really the case here?
Well, I was going to ask you, what actually did he get it for? I mean, because normally they say for services to, I don't know, broadcasting or, you know, services to charitable works or whatever. What did he actually get it for?
Mike, he got it for political and public service.
What?
It's for political and public service, which is absolutely remarkable, because I think in order to be given a knighthood on the basis of political and public service, that really should be about tackling the hard issues, especially those on your doorstep. Yeah. Many of those issues would be connected to law and order. You think that if a mayor of a major city is given an award of that nature, then that would ultimately about performing well in that particular role. Right. And I think that if you look at Sadiq, I'll make this point, Mike, is that all too often he's been guilty of international showboating, scrapping with the President of the United States, intervening in issues such as Roe v. Wade, abortion rights in the United States. Right. Very surprised he has the time to do all this.
Well, exactly right. He also doesn't answer questions. You know, we've seen plenty of footage, haven't we, from when Susan Hall used to be the leader of the Conservative Party, and now we see it with the Reform member who asks quite a lot of questions in what they call Mayor's Question Time. And he's really rude to everybody, and he doesn't answer any questions, and he's really sort of indignant about being asked to sort of justify anything that he does. You know, he's a typical little short narcissist who basically doesn't get along with any kind of criticism about him at all.
No, he doesn't cope with criticism very well. And I think I've seen many of these sessions in the London Assembly. He does come across as rude. Now, he's not the only politician that fails to provide straightforward answers to questions, but I think he has a very dismissive nature, and I think that it's not a very constructive approach to politics. No. And I think that when you're looking at people who are given knighthoods, you'd want politicians that are able to provide straightforward answers and are quite transparent in their role. They're more deserving of that, in my view.
Well, I'm just looking at some of the comments underneath your piece on the Telegraph. First one says, obnoxious man. Another one says, I wonder how the late Queen would have handled this. Just looking at him makes me feel sick. The arrogance of the little toad, saying the King apologised to him for keeping him waiting. You know, nobody's got anything good to say about him. I mean, I don't know anyone. This is a real mystery. I don't know anyone who votes for him. And yet he keeps winning elections.
Mike, I've made this point before, that it's a myth that the Mayor of London is popular in the capital. If you actually look at the turnout and the number of votes he receives, it's around 1 in 5 Londoners vote for him, if that.
Yeah.
In his mayor elections.
Well, I think there was something like only about 20% of voters actually voted in the last election, didn't they?
Well, in terms of actually look at the turnout and then the amount of votes that he receives, it's only a minority of Londoners that actually vote for Sadiq Khan. And I think
that's the right figure. I think it's 20% of Londoners that have actually voted for him rather than 20% of the electorate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that the point to make, I've always made this point, if the Conservatives took a more optimistic and positive approach to these mayoral elections in London and actually put up a candidate which in my view is a more professional and impressive candidate, then I think that they'd actually find some joy in London. If you see in recent times, especially when it comes to local elections, some of the most encouraging results for the Conservatives have been in the capital. So I think they should look at the capital as a place where they could find electoral success in the future.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, he can't serve another term, can he?
Well, I wouldn't put anything past this.
Well, I wouldn't. But I mean, technically speaking, he's not meant to, right?
No. But I think that the real issue here is that we've had, and by the way, another point to make, he is technically the Police and Crime Commissioner for the capital as well, and the co-governor of Met Police, along with the Home Secretary, who's currently Yvette Cooper. I think for me that this is a classic case of someone who has been electorally successful. I think that's more of a flaw of the system, and the fact that he hasn't had much in the way of electoral competition in these contests.
That's the problem. Absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how he's managed it. I really don't. He should get a prize for being some kind of magician, I think. Rakib, very good to talk to you. Must have you on sooner than the last time. Rakib Hassan, political commentator there, wrote a piece in the Telegraph saying, this man does not deserve to be knighted. How on earth could it have happened? He could not pick a worse individual. He's the last person, says Rakib, that should get a knighthood. He's absolutely right. He shouldn't get one. This from Andy in Nottingham. He says, morning, Mike. Great show as always. This 10,000 jobs is just more lies by Starmer. How many tradesmen do you know that say they've got a new job? They finish one house and then they move on to another. It's not a new job. It's their next job. True. And this one from Dorry in Norfolk. Good morning, Mike. Regarding decriminalisation of sleeping rough, we are seeing more and more illegals camping on our streets. I can see this getting much worse, and then it will be perfect justification for this totally inept government to then justify giving them all the new homes they intend to build. I, for one, am not falling for it. No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And Pete from Altrincham says, Mike, I love it when Ed Miliband says it will create 10,000 jobs. Are these all going to be people currently in a queue at the benefits office, or will these be people currently working and just moving jobs, effectively not reducing the unemployed? Well, again, you're spot on. You know, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all rubbish. It's all lies. The numbers game is for the birds. They are not creating more jobs. They're creating more unemployment. That's why unemployment is up. See what I'm doing? Let's get a voice note from Gaz.
Morning, Mike. Great show, mate. Gaz from Pontefract. Miliband, you stupid Burke. Carbon capture will not work. You're bringing this country to its knees. You don't care if people freeze. Solar panels in a country full of rain. You're throwing our country down the drain. You've cancelled drilling for North Sea oil. You don't like gas. You don't like coil. You pontificate on that world stage. The heat pumps will be all the rage. Climate summits in private jets. We're drowning in net zero debts. Your hypocrisy, it knows no bounds. Your rubber face, how strange it sounds. Just be normal, watch the footy. Have a pint, a bacon butty. We've had enough, the game is up. We've realised we've been sold a pup.
Unbelievable stuff, yeah. Very well said, though, Gaz. Very well put together. Poem of the day. It's got to be done. And coming up, we've got more to do. There's a picture I want to show you of some rams, which I was going to do a lot earlier in the show, but I completely forgot. They're on the roof of a house, right? You won't believe it till you see it. It's a picture in the Sun today. Nobody knows how they got up there. Seriously. 10 to 10.
You know all those people who bang on the doors and put leaflets through the doors and do market stalls? I think they are so undervalued, actually, in most political parties. So I want to get round. I know how hard it is to campaign, so I want to get round and look after them and also act as the conduit back to the professional party. Now, in terms of talk, I'm delighted to say that after the conversation I had this morning, I will remain part of the talkTV and radio family. I think it's unlikely that I will do my weekend breakfast show.
OK, well, that'll be very bad news for an awful lot of your audience.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 9:53. Trevor says this from Harrow. Good morning, Mike. I don't think you have to worry about driverless taxis. As soon as they're launched, they will be taken off our streets, as a taxi company will not pour any more money into taxis that keep being vandalised. Yeah, you can imagine that. And stolen, probably, as well. Now, earlier, I spoke to Brigadier Ed Butler, former SAS commanding officer, for an exclusive interview about how our government looks at our servicemen and whether Russia is a real threat to us. Plus, what it's like being in the SAS.
There's a lot of lawyers, ambulance-chasing lawyers who are out there who are talking to people in Afghanistan and wider and trying to create a story. Right. And that's my point.
And some business, presumably, for that.
And some business, yeah. But let the inquiry follow its course and Lord Haddonhave come up with his findings at the end. And if he finds a case to answer, then so be it. Yeah. But don't hound people who are out there day and night defending our country, our national interests, while they've got a job to do, because they are really worried that every time they pull the trigger, there's going to be a lawyer or the media coming after them 10 and 20 years' time. And it's not just the special forces. There's people in the wider army who are saying, hang on a minute, is this going to be the same for me? If they're chasing our elite forces, what about me as an ordinary serviceman or woman in the Army, Navy or Air Force?
And do you think the Army protects these people enough?
Personally, I don't think so. There is a wall of silence about actually protecting our servicemen and women. And the government, the MOD, needs to be seen to back our soldiers and servicemen all the way through, from cradle to grave. Yeah. The latest Strategic Defence Review, is extremely well written by Lord Robertson, General Barrons and Fiona Hill. It's very clear what it lays out. It defines what our current capabilities are, what the threats are, and what we need to do in the next 10 years. And great that the government has said it will, it has accepted the 62 recommendations. Right. But actually, are the resources going to be there to make this happen? Yeah. 10 years? I don't think we've got 10 years. We're in the middle of a...
No, I don't think we have either.
Well, we're in the middle of a peer-on-peer war in Ukraine at the moment. Russia is very much being very aggressive. We know that. If there is a resolution there, will Russia, and this is a concern I think people are grappling with in NATO, is will they try and have a go at another state to really test the Article 5, and will NATO react?
Do you think they will try and test that?
I think they will. Whether that's, we've got to, I don't think they'll do it.
You've got to think that they might anyway, haven't you?
I think that's their intent.
Yeah.
Once we've come to whatever the resolution is going to be in Ukraine, and I don't think that's going to be for a while yet. It will take them not that long to regenerate, but they don't have to mass another great big army. They're already probing and testing through cyber, through disinformation and subversive activity, which is a big threat. So can we get on a war footing? That's what's been declared. Right. I think the need is there, the threat is there, so something's got to be done, but there's got to be a very clear balance of how we commit our resources. And as a nation, we've got to make those tough decisions about whether we invest more in our social welfare, our NHS, or we do what every government needs to do, which is protect our society and our people against aggressive acts.
What's it like to be in the SAS? I mean, it's kind of a stupid question, but I think people would want to know what it's like to be in the SAS. Do you sort of stride the world like I don't know, the Colossus?
No, not at all. I mean, obviously, it's a huge privilege.
Yeah,
and it's full of very experienced, very talented individuals, some brilliant people to work with.
Yeah,
very, very strong sense of purpose and duty. Very strong teamwork, and no, we don't like walking around the world like Colossus. You say it's much more discreet and subtle than that. We want to be able to operate discreetly, effectively, and do what our government asks us to do, which other members of the military are not able to do.
Right.
And that's a really privileged position to be in.
Yeah, incredible. That's Brigadier Ed Butler, their former SAS commanding officer in Afghanistan. I'm just going to show a quick picture before we hand over to Julia Hartley-Brewer, who's here. Very good morning to you, Julia.
Very good morning.
I don't know if you've seen this picture. It's quite weird. It's in the Sun today, page 25. A homeowner was struck when he saw there was some sheep on his roof. You might have to show it slightly bigger than that, but anyway, there it is. The thing is, nobody knows how they got up there, right? This is up in a place called...
Who has that not happened to?
Penrith in Cumbria, right? They had to get the fire brigade round to get them down. They used a load of ladders and things and ropes, but nobody knows how they got up there. How did sheep get up to the top of your house? Amazing. I mean, you've got to laugh, haven't you? Because the news is so depressing. I just thought, let's have some sheep on a roof.
Let's have some sheep on a roof. Why not? Why not?
Sheep
well, no,
on a
everything's
roof. I'm
fine.
surprised they weren't hurling themselves off, actually.
I know. No, Rachel Reeves hadn't started speaking yet. Maybe Rachel Reeves, she has those people who stand behind looking miserable like Keir Starmer has. Maybe she'll just have sheep next time.
No, you might as well have.
Well, oh no, sorry, she's got Labour MPs.
Yeah,
so same thing.
Well done.
Yeah, no, they fixed the foundations.
They have.
We're all sorted. We're going to have a massive spending boost in loads of areas.
This is the new chapter now, isn't it?
It's a new chapter. Everything is fine because we're all feeling better off.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, we're all just splurging the cash.
Amazing.
Prices are down.
Yeah.
Jobs are up.
Yeah. I just spoke
everything
to a
is
plumber.
great.